So what Lactoid is saying is, not until we're at the stage in which there's a full-on dictatorship and a king, will Lactoid come and Johnny come lately say, okay, I guess it was a constitutional crisis. We're getting rid of the Department of Education. How much more clear could he be?
They said dismantling.
Oh my God. Wait, I'm asking you a very simple question, and everyone sees you're dodging it. Is it an indefinite pause or is it definite?
In terms of
Did they purport to pause it indefinitely or not? Answer the question.
I don't know. If he did, that's fine as long as he stops.
As long as you know you're cooked, and he won't answer the question.
Pisco.
His position needs to be, I don't know if there's a constitutional crisis because you don't know if it's definite or indefinite. That's just logic, bro.
You want to add on me?
Oh,
okay,
you started it. You literally said I was sucking Trump's. You
are.
Idiot.
Hey, folks, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to read what's going on from a pro-republic, anti-corruption, and anti-oligarch perspective, subscribe to The Weekly Patriot. The link is in the description.
Welcome to yet another episode of WIC TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we talk to people from both sides of the aisle about issues political, cultural, from the silly to the serious. And gang, have we got a show for you today? We are going to be talking about Trump and the Constitution. Has Trump put us into a constitutional crisis with his executive orders, his use of Doge and Elon Musk, and many other issues at hand? Some say he has, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what that would mean and what we could do about it if it's so. But I have some lovely guests today to talk about it. I think everyone here, except for me and Soy Pill, deal with the law in some way, or lawyers. So it should be an interesting discussion, and I'm glad to be here. Pisco, open us up. Give us your thoughts. Why is this a constitutional crisis? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's clearly a constitutional crisis. Donald Trump is a disgrace to his office, and he is implementing a Project 2025 agenda specifically to centralize power to create authoritarian government. When I use the term constitutional crisis, I'm talking about any kind of significant and existential threat to the structure of the Constitution. We're not just talking about violations of a particular amendment. We're not just talking about, whether free speech was violated in a given instance. We're talking about the authorities of the government itself, the foundation of the different branches of government, which is the foundation of our society and what binds us together. That's what we mean by constitutional crisis. Okay, so what we're talking about here is a more systemic structural problem that has been introduced maliciously by this government and the deniable private actors that it employs to try to essentially centralize power. So what's the crisis? All right. Number one, they are attempting to usurp Article 1 of the Constitution and to steal legislative authority from Congress. This is evident both in their unconstitutional and unlawful spending freeze that has already been stopped by two courts, district courts, count them, who have acknowledged that this is, very clearly trying to usurp the exclusive authority of the Congress to spend the money. And Article 1 clearly sets out that it's Congress who gets to decide what to spend the money. You can make some flippant comparison to a temporary pause, limited in scope, limited in time, one other instance in the history of this country. It is not at all dealing with the broader systemic attack on Congress's ability to appropriate funds. And let's think about it. Imagine if it were the case that Congress's statutes were just advisory, were just opinions, and optional for the president to implement. Absolute bullshit and garbage. And these motherfuckers are going to defend it and say that's not a constitutional crisis. It's a constitutional crisis when we talk about adding Supreme Court members to the bench, but it's not a constitutional crisis to just ignore the appropriations of Congress. Number two, Doge just purporting to eliminate statutorily enacted agencies of Congress. Eliminate, for example, what they're planning to do, the Department of Education, eliminate USAID, statutorily passed. So now what we're talking about here and what they're going to defend is that it's not a constitutional crisis for the president president or his minions or his deniable oligarch friends to just delete an agency or to do the effective deletion in the case of just stripping them of all their funding, stripping them of everything. That is disgusting that they would defend that. And then finally, what we're gearing up to next, which is the attack on the judicial system, the real attack on the Supreme Court, where J.D. Vance, the authors of Project 2025, have all told us that they want to bring to heel the judicial department of the United States of America. They're already starting by this little rescinding of the memo that you saw, the spending freeze. Well, we rescind the memo, but not the policy. The district court judge in D.C. called them out, said it was one of the most disingenuous things she's ever seen to try to escape judicial review in that context. And what they're gearing up for, what J.D. Vance said, what these people said is, let Marshall enforce his rule. He's made his ruling, now let him enforce it, hearkening back to this apocryphal statement from Andrew Jackson. That's obviously what they're gearing up for. It's so serious, in fact, that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, someone who I disagree with vehemently on, had to come out publicly and make a statement directly, not directly, but everyone knows, addressing J.D. Vance and these kinds of disgusting robber barons. He came out and said, it's very concerning that people are talking about ignoring the courts, and they're going to defend it. And they're going to tell you, hey, it's no big deal. We don't give a shit about it. It's not a crisis at all. They're completely washed. They're completely cooked. They have no idea what's going on in this country. Your freedoms and the structure of the country is being attacked.
Okay. Well, thanks. That was passionate. We'll get into it. Just maybe I should have been more clear. Be a little concise on these opening statements, gang. I want to get into the back and forth when we go. Zetsway,
Sure.
Your cart. Go ahead.
Zoe, I'm more of just not a content creator or anything, but I'm just more of an acquaintance of Wix and Lactoid, and I'm an attorney, so I agreed to chat on this. I don't believe there's a constitutional crisis, mostly because constitutional crisis refers, at least my position, to something that our current systems don't have the tools to deal with it. Things like the Civil War, where you go, we don't have procedures on secession from the country. So if we have tools to deal with it, then it wouldn't be a constitutional crisis. And in terms of so I just don't believe that the current situation, not saying it's good, or that you're just saying that our current system has checks and balances in place to rectify if you don't like what's happening.
Okay, thanks for being here. Next up, we have the soy pill, please.
Hi everyone. As Wick so kindly pointed out, I'm not a lawyer. I am Jewish, so I have genetic memory of being a lawyer, and maybe that will help me here. But I'm arguing on the side that this is a constitutional crisis, which is defined essentially when the function and powers of government, the checks and balances, are not functioning as intended in the Constitution. As Pisco so elegantly pointed out and laid out, I won't get too deep into the details, but Trump is consolidating power into the executive branch and completely subverting those checks and balances, whether that be federal freezing of funds that are approved already by Congress, whether that be instituting Schedule F, reclassifying federal workers so that he can fire people that would otherwise have oversight on him, or doing any of the other things where he's ignoring court orders to check his power. It is a constitutional crisis. When we talk about whether or not we have the tools to fix it, I think we can clearly see that the tools that should be the checks and balances are being ignored, are being eroded. And if the standard for whether or not it's a constitutional crisis is going to be whether or not we have a civil war, I think that is an insane standard. But hey, that's an argument to make, so let's see if we do it. That's about all I have.
Well, thank you for being here and excited to get into it. Lactoid, last but not least, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
You're fine, yeah.
So there's a Twitter user, his name is Zero Fucks, F-U-X, and he put out, it was like who said it? Was it Hitler or was it Pisco? And a couple of the ones are actually pretty difficult to differentiate, because what Pisco does is he uses incredibly hyperbolic language, us versus them categorization, and a sort of, mindset of they are evil, we need to defeat them, no alliances, nothing we can do. We're in a total crisis. We're dunzos. Holy shit, this is awful. We have to go to war. This is exactly the same kind of rhetoric that he criticized Trump using, right? Where you say fight like hell, you say, fight them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, very much like Trump, hey, I don't mean this violently, but still, it is incredibly divisive. It is incredibly aggressive language. And it's also alarmist, I guess, in this regard. We're not in a constitutional crisis right now. I think that's kind of a ridiculous statement. I actually agree with the definition that there is a significant quote. Here's a constitutional crisis is a significant and existential threat to the Constitution, not just a violation or a violation that has yet to be examined by the Supreme Court, which is its job, but a threat to the very structure. I think it's hilarious that people who want to add justices to the Supreme Court now care all of a sudden about constitutional crises. Notice how they've sort of dropped that language now that Trump won. But everything that Pisco went through legally, there is answers for all of it, right? Doge is made up of special government employees, which is allowed. They are allowed to do the things they are doing. When we're talking about destroying agencies, it depends how you do it. I agree that you can't just unilaterally remove an agency, but there is abilities to, have agencies work with other agencies for certain agencies to divert funding from one agency to another agency in order to get cert XYZ thing done. There's plenty of legal tools that you can use, that the president can use without threatening the separation of powers, without going against what Congress has the power to do. And one of those is simply delay things, which XYZ here, funding freeze. It is a delay, especially when it comes to U.S. aid. So there's legal examples for everything that was just mentioned. A lot of it is just alarmist and really fomenting hate, I think, against otherwise good people. Oh, and one last thing. Of course, we should be cutting government waste. Of course, this is a good thing. I think Doge has done incredible steps. And in fact, I think a lot of the motivation for the anger here is because of how effective they've been on identifying government waste and other horrible things that the government's been getting away with for a very long time.
Okay, well, we have some strong stances. Let's get into it. The floor is open. If you have trouble getting in, a word edgewise, just raise your hand or DM me. Or
yeah, the debate is not whether or not Pisco is a hypocrite. The debate is not whether or not Pisco is inflammatory. The debate is not whether Pisco supports this or that. The debate is about whether there's a constitutional crisis. And first of all, I think we should dispense with Zetsu's standard. And I think, Lactoid, you disagree with Zetsu's standard, which is there needs to be a civil type war situation for it to be a constitutional crisis.
I don't think that was his standard.
Right? We agree that's stupid.
Standard.
Well, what was your standard?
Real quick. That was not his standard. And the reason why I identified how hyperbolic you are is because I knew that you would try to pull this shit because you've been nothing but hyperbolic the past couple of weeks. This shit. You're saying, he's saying, here's an example of a constitutional crisis.
Is the debate
he's
about me?
He's not saying there's the only. Hold on.
Okay, so what's your standard?
You came at us firstly. Secondly, he's not saying this is the only example of a constitutional crisis, which is a civil war. He's saying that is a example.
Well, no, he said it would have to be
something like. I was assuming something that, like, I'm using an extreme example that we can all understand.
Let's be clear, right? So if the president
standards as a threshold,
if the president and if Elon Musk, and let's ask this both of Zetsu and of Lactoid, if they just purported to delete an agency enacted by Congress, would you say that it's a constitutional crisis? If they started doing at least two.
If they straight up try and delete it without anything, if they do something else that somehow hinders it, then no. But if they actually just say it doesn't exist anymore, you're all fired, that like I've gotten rid of the department, then yes, I guess I would
that's
say
a constitutional crisis.
And he hasn't done that.
But I'm saying he hasn't done that.
But Lacto, you'd agree with that?
Pisco, let me ask you. Hold on, real quick. Pisco,
you can do it.
Pisco, do you think that Trump has done that?
Elon Musk has purported to delete and saying he's going to delete USAID, and they're planning to delete the Department of Education.
USAID gone right now.
Yeah, so USAID is still an entity right now, but they're planning to do it. They're saying they're going to do it. Correct? Yes or no, Lactoid?
You can do it,
Lactoid,
but not just on their own.
Are they saying they're going to do it? Yes or no?
What they're saying
yes
is
or
that
no?
They're going to.
Yes or no?
Hold on. When we're talking about like removing an agency, there's like different ways you can interpret that. Yes, there's different ways you can interpret that. If we're talking about gutting an agency by using the tools available to the executive, which is managing this agency and appoints employees to this agency, including special government employees, yeah, that's totally fine.
At this motherfucker. So you're actually saying that it's possible that the president could have the authority to just ignore and completely gut an agency, is what you're saying.
Sir, if we're talking about deleting...
Just real quick, Lactoid, we're going to need one at a time. I know there's a lot of passion here, right? But in interest of the viewers and the audience, and I feel it would be in their best interest to get a full, educated account of what's going on. Try not to yell over each other too much this time, right?
That's not what we should be here for. Sorry, Wick.
Thank you, Wick. I appreciate that. No, I think that it depends what you're talking about here. If they're saying, yeah, we're going to dismantle this by using what we can do as the executive of going in, cutting waste, cutting inefficiencies, which absolutely the president has the ability to do.
They said
the president also has the ability to delay things. Hold on. If that's what they mean by that, then that's totally fine. If they're going to
delete means
hold on. Hey, Wick just got done talking to you. Give me a second. If we're going to be talking about completely unilaterally deleting an entire agency, I would agree. But the question is, has Trump
what does that
put us
mean?
into a constitutional crisis? Not, is it possible that at some point in the future, Trump might
we're
put us
deep
into
in a constitutional crisis. So
We're
basically,
deep in one.
what
Does
Lactoid is saying.
USA
So what
Okay,
Lactoid
hold
is
on.
saying. Wait. So I'm responding now. So what Lactoid is saying is not until we're at the final stage. This is kind of like, if you guys remember Actual Justice Warrior. He's like, not until we're at the stage in which there's a full-on dictatorship and a king will Lactoid come and Johnny Come Lately say,
No.
okay, I guess it was a constitutional crisis. No, they're clearly planning and edging towards a completely gutting, and Trump is very obvious about it, saying we're getting rid of the Department of Education. Is that, how much more clear could he be?
They said dismantling. They said
Oh my
dismantling.
God.
I think there's
Also-
absolutely,
Okay, but
there's
there's
absolutely
legal
ways
ways to do that.
Hold
Lactoid,
on.
Can you
Let-
clarify, Lactoid? Like, if someone comes
Can I-
in, appoints a non-government person into this like facility and says, "Hey, you have free reign to freeze federal funding to overturn something that Congress has done that is going beyond what an executive order is allowed to do," at what point are you now like, oh, it's a crisis? When it's done? When they say they're going to do it? When it's like 50% done? Like, that's just what Pisco's getting at. Like, you're just saying, well, they haven't actually done the thing they're going to say 100% to completion, and therefore it's not a deletion. Like, what's the standard then?
I'll
It's
explain.
only when it's done.
So this is a misunderstanding, and I'm sure part of it is the misunderstanding is influenced by Pisco's hyperbolic language here. When we're talking about, yeah, I would say that doing the thing that you're saying would be unconstitutional. If he does that, then yeah, you could argue that at that point that'd be a constitutional crisis. But everything
Okay,
right
so
now that's been
freezing
done
federal
has not
funding,
been
is that
he
is that
he
a
has the right to
constitu-
do
is
that.
illegal?
He has
the right to
The
fund-
court
he
has
does.
said that he has to stop
Yes,
that.
he does. Hold on.
What right?
Doge specifically are special government employees. The president has the authority to appoint. They are members of the Treasury.
No, to freeze
A
all funding.
Court decision today, or it was either today or yesterday, came out and said that Doge does have the right to access this information. And the
To
president
freeze all funding.
Elon is the employee. Elon is an employee.
Freeze
about
all
something else.
funding. You just heard
Hold
him.
on,
He
we're getting
said
there.
freeze all
We're
funding.
getting there. We're getting there. Trump is
We'll get there.
Elon Musk is in this case, a special government, or Doge at least, is a special government employees. They're made up of special government employees of the Treasury, and they report to Donald Trump, who is the elected president,
Freeze all funding.
and Congress. And yes, you have the right. The president has the right, in order to avoid inefficiencies, to freeze funding, to delay funding. Now,
Indefinitely,
can they
right?
abolish
Wait,
it?
I just
No,
want
they
to
can't.
hear.
Yeah, like-
Until the end of the fiscal year.
Until at least the end of the fiscal year.
Lactoid.
Stop.
Indefinitely?
Yeah.
Until the end of the fiscal year. That's what you just
Indefinitely?
said. No, I just said until the end of. Do you not hear my answer?
So do you agree that they pause indefinitely?
No, they don't say it's paused infinitely. They
Wait.
don't go like forever.
Do you agree, yes or no, that they pause the funding indefinitely?
No, they did not say it's infinitely forever.
Did
or
they
more.
define
They pause,
when it ended?
yeah, they pause it. They pause it until they have to not pause.
Well, yeah.
it,
Wait,
which
is that
well
indefinite?
within the constitutional authority of the president.
Is that indefinite or is that definite?
Are you trying to take advantage
No,
of people's
stop.
maybe perhaps lack
Answer
of
the
knowledge
fucking
between
question.
indefinite
Answer the
and
fucking question.
infinitely?
Is that an indefinite or is it a definite end to the pause? You just said he could not pause it
locally-
indefinitely.
technically,
I'm
yes.
asking you.
So-
Wait,
so-
I'm
so
asking you a very
that's
simple
doing- so-
question, and everyone sees you're dodging it. Is it an indefinite pause or is it definite?
It's perfectly acceptable.
Locally,
Is
no.
it definite or indefinite? Is it definite or indefinite?
Can
Look at this fucking
can I
weasel.
answer the question
Hold
without
on,
cutting me off?
stop. Okay, gang, I thought
can't
this.
answer
I
the
was
question,
like, okay,
apparently.
I only got 4 people on. They're usually pretty good. They're usually pretty. This is gonna be a calm conversation. I was wrong. Okay,
The stakes
indefinite.
are high, Wick. It's our
Let's-
country being
I
eroded.
just want,
Sorry.
I just want, just real quick. But I do want you to, Lactoid, I do want you to answer
Thank you.
Pisco's question. Is it indefinitely or is it definitely that it was paused?
Well, so it can't legally it can't be indefinitely in terms of
Did
like
they
forever, I
purport to
guess.
pause it indefinitely or not? Answer the fucking
Can you
question.
stop? Can you stop? Can you stop for a second? If we're talking about like forever, no, it can't be paused forever.
Did
There
they
appears be-
purport to
Hold
pause it
on, hold on,
indefinitely?
hold on. I can see you. I can see you coming at it. They can't pause it forever. Okay.
Did
Now,
they?
He could say. I don't know. If he did, that's fine as long as he stops before the.
They,
as long as
you know
as
you're
long
cooked,
as-
and he won't answer the question.
Pisco. Let me answer, please, without you jumping in.
You're
every
not
5
answering
seconds.
the fucking question.
I am. I said I don't know if he specifically put in the
You
order
don't know. You didn't read the fucking pause. Are you that stupid?
Stop.
Okay.
Okay, Wick, you have to take control of this maniac for a second. Jesus Christ. Okay, listen to me. I don't know if in the order they specified that specific word definitely or indefinitely. They said a specific
They
date or
don't.
not. But the reality is you can. It's perfectly fine to say, hey, we are freezing this for whatever period of time, as long as they unfreeze it by any kind of required time period This is not violating separation of powers. This isn't violating the constitutional authority granted to the president, regardless
I'm not
of what
moving
he
on.
says. What are
You
talking
have to answer the question. The question is the answer you don't know whether they pause it indefinitely or
that's
definitely?
what I
Okay, so if your
You want me to
answer
answer
is
it
you
again?
don't, so is the answer? If the
Word
answer
indefinite is
wait,
not in
wait,
there.
wait, just to be
Wait,
clear,
the word indefinite is not in there. Just so we
wait,
just
Hold on,
check.
Pisco,
Oh my
Pisco,
God!
Pisco.
Wait, did you
He knows he's
lie?
cooked.
Did you
He
just
knows
lie
he's
to all of
cooked.
us?
He knows he's cooked.
Did you just lie to all? Hold on. Wait, hold on.
Oh my God!
Can someone link me? Can someone link me this order so I
Zetsui.
can just?
He's not claiming
Simple
it says the word indefinite.
I'm
He's
not
using
claiming it
indefinite
says the
means it
word
doesn't give a
indefinite.
specific ending point.
Correct.
Does he
So
have to-
that's why I
does
say
he have to-
colloquially,
does he have to
no, it's not
specify?
indefinite.
Does he have to specify a specific endpoint?
So
Is it reasonable to believe that it's infinite?
He's not going to let me. He's not going to let me
means.
say this point. So
ahead, man.
Lactoid just told you he does not know whether or not it's indefinite or a definite and on pause. But he told you before that it would be totally unacceptable to have an indefinite pause on funding. That would constitute a constitutional crisis. Ipso facto, his position needs to be, I don't know if there's a constitutional crisis because you don't know if it's definite or indefinite. That's just logic, bro.
No. This is insane. Zetsui just said the word indefinite is not used. So I apologize.
The only way to have an indefinite like
because we're
pause is
using
to
two different evidence.
What kind of argument is that?
If you
No,
It
what?
wasn't an argument.
Please.
It's not an argument. It was a statement.
yeah. So
You
we're
disagree with
talking.
it?
And now you're
we're-
using it to defend your
Do you think?
stupid
Do you think
position.
my
We're-
position?
we're-
Wait. Do you think my
I'm
position
talking
is?
to Pisco
Do you think my position was the word definite or indefinite wasn't used, or was I talking about the substance, whether or not it was an indefinite or definite pause? Don't be a idiot.
I answered your question
Then it's not
directly. I said
indefinite. Then it's not
colloquially,
indefinite.
no.
It's not indefinite
Technically,
unless they
didn't
use
use
the
the
term
word.
indefinite. That's your position.
Well, in this
No.
case, yes. In this
That's your
case, it's
position,
not
yes.
indefinite
Okay,
because
got it.
Yes.
Is it possible to
because
say
they're
something is
statutory-
indefinite with using
Because
using
they're
that
limited.
word? If I say
Because they're
until I
limited.
decide otherwise,
You
Hold
are
on.
f***ing
Really
cooked.
indefinite means
what
forever.
is it? What is this semantic ass argument?
Technically
It's
means
fucking
it doesn't
ridiculous.
specify directly.
I'm not the one
endpoint.
making this semantic ass.
You're
It's
literally
not
defending yourself by
semantic.
saying
I'm not.
the thing you didn't
Okay,
know.
Okay,
till
one at a
that's
time.
what
We're
came.
gonna
Okay,
reset.
that's
We're gonna reset. Okay, so apparently the spending freeze. To be clear to my audience, what we're talking about now, we're talking about the spending freeze on U.S. aid. Correct? Is that
Correct. On
that
federal
what we're
federal
talking
financial
about?
assistance as defined in the 2-page memo, and then the policy continues. The memo has been rescinded. That's a way of they're trying
Does
to
he have
evade
the right
judicial
to
review.
freeze it, Pisco?
Not indefinitely. You just said it, right? You agreed with me.
Wait,
Not
but
indefinitely.
does he have the right to freeze it? Yes or no?
No.
He also
No,
doesn't
he has
have
to
the
comply.
right- Yes or no? Does he have the right to
no.
freeze
The
it?
answer is
He does
no.
not have the right to
The
freeze
answer
it.
is
He does not have the right to freeze it.
The answer
It is
is
already
the answer
approved
is
by
no.
Congress.
He needs to follow the procedure set out by Congress in many different statutes, including the Impoundment Act and other statutes. He has to follow the law. Okay.
Impoundment Act
I don't
isn't
think that we have
law.
a king like you do who can just ignore
Wait,
Congress's
he has the
core
right
legislative
to,
authority.
So you're wrong. He has the right to freeze the funds under the Impoundment Act.
He didn't follow the procedures
that's
of the
not-
Impoundment Act.
that's
He didn't
No,
do what the
Impoundment
Impoundment Act
is a good
demands.
law.
Okay, all right. So here we go.
Go
here we
ahead, Zetsui.
Chad,
Yeah, bail me out.
New
Bail me
Haven.
out.
Wait. Do you think Chatham and New Haven aren't good law?
Wait. Sorry. You just said the Impoundment Act is not constitutional. Is that
Yes.
what you just said?
As-
And you
as- no, no, as
think
the
that the
deferral.
Supreme
The
Court
deferral's been gutted by Chatham and New Haven.
But you agree that there are procedures by which the president, in order to institute a wide scale or even just a short-term pause on funding,
Yes.
he needs to go through, and that he did not go through those processes. Oh, you think
No,
he did?
those have been gutted. Chatham and New Haven.
So it is your
Okay,
position.
You know those cases. I know
for
you
my
know those
audience's-
cases, dude.
Hold on,
Wait,
just
wait,
for my
let
audience's
Zetsui dig the
and my
fucking nails in.
edification, since
The
I'm
nails
not
in.
familiar with Chad Hall or New Haven,
There's no
I'm
nails.
going to give it to Zetsui for a minute. Zetsui, can you explain what those rulings did and why it's
Sure.
applicable to the discussion we're having
So-
right now?
The Impoundment Act was made that allowed for deferrals of like 45 days. Oh, no, sorry, that was rescinded. Deferrals and allowed them to basically defer funds, and either House of Congress could veto it. Chatham made it so that basically you can't have one house vetoes. They ruled that as unconstitutional. In New Haven, they then said the entire deferral thing had to fall because the link between deferring and the House's ability to get rid of it was inextricably linked.
Are
At
you
which
talking about
point it then
legislative
substituted
vetoes?
in new rules.
Are you talking
No,
about?
I'm talking about the. That is part. I mean, that's a way of describing it. Basically, is the way legislative ability to do it.
This is not a
but
legislative
that was
veto.
Part of
this
that.
is. It's not on point.
No, it was a New Haven. I know that's why people
Okay.
disagree with it, but New Haven shot it down. Have you read New Haven?
I've not read the case that you're referring to called New Haven. I don't know.
You know what
I
I'm
don't
talking
know
about,
what that
though.
case is. No, I know what I know the case law on legislative
It's-
vetoes.
it was
This is not. We're not
Reagan
talking.
using this.
We're not talking about legislative
It is.
vetoes.
It's on point.
This is
No,
not
no,
a legislative
this
veto.
was about this exact. It was about the Impoundment Act. New Haven was about the Impoundment Act. Reagan had tried to defer funds,
and they said I could do it under this section, and the court said no, you can't because it fell due to Chadha.
So, wait, so you're saying that Reagan was not? You're saying that Reagan? You're saying that Reagan? I don't know this chronology. I'm just being upfront with you. You're saying that Reagan was not allowed to impound funds. That was the ultimate decision by the court?
No, the ruling was that
was that the ultimate decision that he could not
let him
funds?
explain.
Let
him explain.
They had it fall because they said it was the part that had already fallen was the ability for the legislative veto, for the ability for one house to say, no, you can't defer funds. Chadha removed that. Then in New Haven, he goes, because that fell, it collapsed the whole thing, that Congress would have never given them the power to defer if they weren't allowed to do the one house denial.
The whole thing fell. So it is your position. Wait, I just want to be clear. It's your position that Congressional Budget Impoundment Control Act of 1974 is not good law. It's not enforced.
No, I did not say that. The section
so
as
is
to
it enforced or
deferrals has
not?
been updated.
Okay, is it enforced?
Not in that act. It has been overruled it's been amended.
Okay, are there any procedures that the congressional statutes enforced today, you would acknowledge, under the moniker, the Impoundment Act, that the president is purportedly supposed to follow? Yes, right?
There are no time limits on it. It's because of the way it was gutted. It's so vague now.
Okay, so is it your position that
Crisis.
the president?
You want the language? I can give you the language.
Is it your position? Is it your position? Because Lactoid just told you that he thinks that an indefinite pausing of funding that Congress has passed. I'm assuming Lactoid under
Infinite,
Article 1. No. It doesn't mean infinite. It means indefinite.
I'm saying he meant that.
You meant infinite.
What I'm saying, just to make my position clear, because you just really want to misrepresent this. I mean that I don't believe that the president has to specify a timeline about when the freezing ends, as long as the president is following any restrictions on when the freezing has to be up or when
so now let's follow that line. You're saying the president does not have to follow any specific timeline. Is that fair? That's your position, right? Constitutional?
No. That's not what I said.
Where does it say a timeline?
Listen.
I just posted in
the group. They don't have.
Let Lactoid clarify.
He doesn't have to specify a timeline as long as he follows any timeline required of him by Congress or the Constitution.
Okay, so
would you agree with that? Wait.
No, I do not.
No.
I don't. No,
you think the president has to specify?
Hold on.
No, I do not agree with that.
Hold on. Stop. Pisco. Why don't you agree with that? Go ahead.
I do not agree that the president, who has not the core legislative authority to appropriate funds, has inherent authority to pause for any significant amount of time constitutionally. We're all gonna have disagreements on what that means, just like we are gonna have disagreements on what it means for the First Amendment to whether or not something's defamation, whether or not there's an imminence for purposes of different statutes. So there's no clear boundaries the Constitution imposes such that I can give you that kind of answer. But we know what we mean here, that the president cannot just usurp in a cute way Congress's ability to pass appropriations and to pause, as Lactoid is suggesting, this is what I mean to say is, without a specific time period established, he says that would be allowed constitutionally. That Lactoid is saying that the president, if he wanted to, that can't be right. Wait. Let me please finish this.
Let me give a hypo
Let me please finish this. What Lactoid is trying to tell you is that it's conceivable that it would be constitutional without a congressional statute telling this or suggesting this for the president to be able to pause all congressional appropriations forever, apparently. So, or not on a set schedule. Not on a set,
back and forth.
Sorry. Not on a scheduled timetable. That cannot be correct. That cannot be right.
Can I ask
the order we're going to go? I'm going to be strict with the order.
Here's
what we're going to do. Lactoid, you're going to be able to respond to that, and then we're going to give it to Soypill to ask his question to Lactoid.
I think my question might actually let Lactoid answer better.
Wait. No, this is specifically to something Pisco, okay? So, Pisco, please. Okay. So you're telling me that if the president puts forward an indefinite freeze, but then lifts it the next day, this would be a constitutional crisis because he didn't specify that he was going to be lifting it the next day? Is that your point?
No, that's not my point, because as you remembered, because you wrote down my definition of constitutional crisis, there's a portion there that says a significant and existential threat. And so I think that this threat is significant and existential.
How many days has it been?
Not every indefinite. It's not about the number of days that there has been. It's about the purpose and motives of these people. They're motivated by Project 2025, which you still deny. You still think they have nothing to do with Project 2025. No. Why are you saying, oh my God?
Because here's why.
Idiot. You're you voted for this guy. You're trying to cope and say that it was acceptable.
You can throw all the ad homs you want. Okay?
Like you started your debate saying that, just like you started your debate, right? All the Pisco show, right?
Wait. You can throw all the ad homs you want. That's totally fine. Okay, have fun with that. What I'm saying is beforehand, you very confidently said, oh my God, if the president freezes funding without setting a definitive timetable, this is awful.
It's
This is
unconstitutional. Wait, it's unconstitutional.
Wait, hold on. Yeah, it's a constitutional crisis. You're saying it's unconstitutional.
But that's not my definition for a constitutional crisis.
And so, whoa. And so, then if that's all so bad, etc., right? I'm saying, well, what if the president sets forward a freeze, doesn't specify when it ends, and then lists it the next day, or 2 days later, or 3 days later? How many days has the freeze been in effect?
Yes. So I just want to be
answer that question. How many days?
I want to be So the spending freeze started last Monday. So it's been now 8 or 9 days or something approach in that range.
That's a
January.
crisis?
Stop. He's trying to conflate, and I can very clearly sort of lay this out for you. Something is unconstitutional. We said at the start, doesn't necessarily mean constitutional crisis. And he knows this. Right? So what we're talking about is something that gets to the underlying... 8
days is a crisis?
There we go, right?
Because Pisco doesn't like interruptions.
Right.
Yeah,
so he's afraid, and he knows that I am able to make these differences and distinctions known. And so just because I could say that it's unconstitutional for the president to indefinitely suspend the aid and to put a pause on it in any circumstance without congressional approval, doesn't mean that every instance of that is a constitutional crisis. What we have here that is different, that raises the significance, that raises the intensity and the existential nature, which is in by definition, is one, it applied on a broad scale to all kinds of spending, trillions and trillions of dollars. It applied as part of a clear effort under Project 2025 to bring the Congress to heel. The architects what was the office that instituted this freeze? The OMB. Who are they putting as the head of the OMB? Russell Vought. He talks about this. And this guy,
the Hitler.
The guy who said he's in a post-constitutional era, which he knows, and he's lying to you. So he's trying to do this little shell game where it's the same thing that Republicans and MAGA people do all the time. You find a little thing, be like, okay, so if you just pause this one little loan to this one student and at one little time, so completely minimizing what's going on and narrowing the focus into what we're talking about here, which is a broad spending freeze of legislative enacted appropriations of all kinds. Your comparison is stupid.
Wait, and you agree. So your only contention is that he didn't put a definite time end. If he put the end of the freeze, hold on. If he froze all the funding you're talking about, and let's say put an end date of 3 weeks, would that be constitutional?
So it would, in my opinion, still be unconstitutional. I was going off so the reason why I'm focusing on indefinite is because you're now changing what the definition of indefinite is.
I'm asking you.
You're changing what the definition of indefinite is. You said I don't know, and everyone saw you weasel around. So, but what happened is you said it would be, of course, unacceptable for the president to do an indefinite pause. That's what you said. So I'm like, oh, great, because I happen to know that it's an indefinite pause. And so now we're doing this little word game, and so that's why we're focusing here.
Answer my question
but to answer your question, no. If the president put a year-long pause of this and defined it to end on
3 weeks, I said 3 weeks.
And okay, define it end in 3 weeks.
Yeah, but you think a year-long is okay?
You think a year-long? So this entire debate is going to be a continuum.
Yes or no?
Wait. This entire debate is going to be a continuum fallacy where we have to say,
wow.
We have to say, look at him. This entire debate is going to be a continuum fallacy, which you could apply to any constitutional principle. Where you can say, okay, I don't know. But yeah. So to answer your question, I believe it is unconstitutional for the president to pause aid without congressional approval. You can always find a carve out. You can always find an exception that proves the rule, right? You know this. You know that if there was
an 3 weeks?
Yeah. So you understand, right? That you can always find an exception that can prove the rule. And constitutional law is like that. It's filled with these little gaps. And he is trying to take advantage of that and take advantage of the fact that the Constitution is a short document to say, oh, I guess I can't really say anything's constitutional unless you have the precise nanosecond in which it becomes unconstitutional. That's what he's trying to do here. Don't let him distract you. What's going on here is a broadband and also when I answered it, I said it's unconstitutional. I want to answer it. I said it's unconstitutional.
We got to get.
Make him answer this question. No,
I answered it. I said it's unconstitutional.
Wait,
I answered it. I said it's unconstitutional. Did you hear me say it? I just said it again. 3 weeks. Unconstitutional. Yeah. So unconstitutional for 3 weeks.
And then I asked why.
Wait a second. Without congressional approval, or I think that there could be a carve out in certain imminent circumstances that the Supreme Court may recognize, and you're going to try to play in the joints here and say that's so now we can have any kind of pause. That's not what we're talking about here. And the other absurdity on your end, which was brought out by the soy pill, was you would accept like incredibly long time periods, wouldn't you? You would say a 2-year, right? So let's just put this to you because in fairness,
let's ask Lactoid directly.
In fairness to you, you should answer the question. Is a 2-year ban, a 2-year definite pause on all appropriations by the president unilaterally? Is that constitutional? Yes or no? No.
So no.
Why?
No, I said the very beginning.
Point, but why did he unfreeze it?
The fiscal year, right? The end of the fiscal year. That's what
where does that come from? Where do you get the fiscal year from?
Why did Trump unfreeze it?
That's what Zetsui said was like the updated law in this situation.
But you don't really know.
I understand prior to this, there was a 45-day where the president could unilaterally freeze it, and then Congress could go ahead and veto it after the fact. They just removed the veto, essentially. The president absolutely has the power to freeze funding, right? And spend it within the fiscal year. He can freeze it. There is no requirement that he has to
fiscal year, right?
Freezes it
for each fiscal year,
8 days for this fiscal year. Yeah.
No, but he could do it again, right? So he could do it for the first fiscal year, pause it, then rescind the pause, then pause it again for the second fiscal year, then rescind the pause, then pause it again for the third year.
Wait, is that answer yes to that? To spend it.
Wait. Is the answer yes?
You have to argue.
My understanding
is the answer yes.
So wait, hold on. In this hypothetical Candyland world, you're saying that the president can pause all federal funding, congressional approved federal funding for 364 days, spend it all on the last day, and then the next fiscal year just keep doing that, completely subverting the entire purpose of Congress to approve federal funding?
Wait, we're asking Lactoid.
No, I don't care what you're saying. I want Lactoid.
They don't care what you're saying.
We're asking Lactoid.
I don't know. That's a good. Probably.
That can't be in the constitutional design. That can't be right.
I don't know.
Hold up.
Let him answer. You asked him a question. You got to give him a chance to answer. Go ahead.
He answered. He said, "I don't know. I don't give a shit what he's about to say."
I said, "I don't know." And I looked up and I was thinking about it.
He thinks it would be constitutional to live in a world where Congress just doesn't have any power
whatsoever.
And, we can play these little games where it's like, well, actually, the loophole says if I just spend it all on December 31st, suddenly you don't get to approve funding. What the?
Notice how they haven't even let me complete my answer yet. Like this is.
Oh, sorry, complete it.
They're just like blabbering and yapping constantly.
Yeah, when you started shit, it makes me upset. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, and then apparently on a panel, you just can't help but yap while I'm trying to get my thoughts out. So my thoughts on this are, thinking about it thoroughly. I think that if you froze funding and then this is reviewed by the courts and the court orders you to release the freeze, then I would assume, yes, then you would have to release it within some reasonable period of time.
Okay.
The question is whether the court...
And he is defying these court orders. Do you think that's a constitutional crisis? When the checks and balances are saying, hey, you have to unfreeze it.
Didn't say unfreeze everything.
No. Yeah, well, he's not unfreezing the stuff they're telling him to unfreeze anyway. So what does it matter?
That's not how. It wasn't even a specific thing. They said they rescinded.
They said the EPA funding. The EPA funding is what they told him to unfreeze, and he's ignoring that court order. Is that constitutional?
Not with. It doesn't mean literally. They can't override executive power. It says you can't freeze as related to that memo. There's other reasons you delay funds. There's plenty of reasons why things get delayed.
You guys will make any.
They're saying that you don't believe them, though.
This is what Lactoid wants you to believe, right? So Lactoid is saying...
It's been 8 days. 8 days. That's a crisis, apparently.
Lactoid is saying, conceivably, in his mind, it would not be a constitutional crisis, obviously, if the president would just, for 364 days... completely pause funding, and then on the last day, undo the freeze, and now funding starts to go through. But of course, given practicalities, it can't go through all in one day just because of the practicalities. And then on the second day, say, okay, another 364 pause. And he thinks that is conceivably not that's not a constitutional crisis. Fair, Lactoid? Is that fair?
No, that would. No, wait. That probably would be, because if you're unfreezing on the last day to the point where the funds can't go out in good faith. If that was the intention, that
let's
obviously
say it's
would be against
a week long to get them all out. All right, it's 358 days. Okay,
all the funding gets out.
Yeah.
No.
That's not
a constitutional crisis.
So it's 358 days of freeze. All the funding gets out. Congress has no say in what's getting spent on. This is not a constitutional crisis.
If all the funding gets out and a court hasn't ordered him to spend within a certain time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Why would that?
No, it all gets up. So Congress just has no say in how we spend anything. That's
no, they do have a say. He has to spend all of it.
Yeah, no, but he doesn't have to spend
what
they
told
him to spend. He gets to spend it on whatever he wants. That's what I'm saying.
They gave him mass discretion.
No. But Lactoid, we're stuck in this formalism game. First of all, I agree. I think the power to spend also, usually implies a timeliness to the spending as well. Obviously, there's going to always be the nature of an executive is there's going to be bureaucratic red tape. We're not unreasonable people here that there's going to be steps and hoops that you have to go through. But let's take a step out of the formalism. What is this really about? This isn't about the pause itself. It's about Trump leading on the legislative branch, on the agencies, to assert his authority and to usurp Congress. His clear intention is to make himself the master of all the government. And we're ignoring that. Like, why should we ignore that when that's clearly his purpose? He wants to centralize authority. That's what they're doing in their Project 2025 agenda. That's what they talk about. And you're acting like it's not real. And you're acting like until we get the point that it's 364 days, we're chicken little. And we have to reach that point where there's no hope for us to fight against.
No.
And only then can we start calling it a constitutional crisis.
I just said no. Hold on. I just said no. There would there would likely have to be like enough time in order to fulfill the obligations set forward by Congress. However, Congress gives the president significant ability when it comes to delaying and deferring funds based on investigations and inefficiencies, which is the whole point of DOJ.
Does the president have to follow those laws?
This isn't about the president usurping power from the legislative branch. It's been 8 days, okay?
Dude.
It's been 8 days. I asked him 3 weeks, and he said 3 weeks would be unconstitutional. Like now you're turning it into a year.
And we asked you 1 year, and you said that would be fine.
Okay, wait,
what would be? What is your standard of a constitutional crisis?
Well, for you, what's your
this is
standard?
a stupid game.
You said it's unconstitutional.
Yeah, this is a
stupid
stupid
game that you very clearly want to play when it comes to me saying, I think it's called
president delays funds.
Okay. I'm throwing a flag on the play. Because I think that Pisco made a point that I do want addressed by the other side, but we keep getting bogged down in the details. Which fair enough. You're all lawyers. I get it. All right. But the assertion made by Pisco's side here is that this is just the intention here is what matters. And the intention from Trump and his team is to grant a large amount of power to the executive branch, more so than what they are entitled to under the Constitution. And this is what represents the crisis, if you will. So we could nitpick the individual actions all we'd like, and we will. We got a lot of
it's a necessary. Yeah, both are necessary. The intent and purpose is really, really important to what we're talking about here.
I want to hear Zetzway's and Lactoid's response to the intent here, right? This has been the claim that there is an intent and that these actions showcase the intent. Despite how many days or not days, both with the rescinding of the memo, but also, right, not rescinding the freeze when they've been court ordered to. Lactoid and then Zetzway, and then we can go.
Yeah, I think the intention here is to cut government waste and excess inefficiencies, as is the purpose of DOJ, as is the specific authorization given to the president under the Impoundment Act to delay funding. In fact, under the original act, it was 45 days. Right, until Congress could step in, and he isn't even within that 45 days. He isn't even outside that 45 days yet. It's been only 8 days. I mean, we're even within the period, the old period, which was more strict than the current period, like that. So we talked about. So no, I don't think this is some kind of massive power grab. I think that what it is it's a kind of a belief of, we have to rally around Donald Trump through any means necessary. You've heard them say it, right? He is a demon in their eyes, and they want to obstruct and slow things down. And the best way to do that is to overtly demonize and alarm everybody about things that are relatively milquetoast. 8 days, 8 days, well within the executive authority. The Supreme Court has not come down with a decision on this. Okay. I would agree. If he unilaterally destroys the entire agency, or if he ignores the Supreme Court, I've said this before, when it comes to Texas ignoring the Supreme Court on the border, if you ignore the Supreme Court, yes, when you have those kind of issues, like an overt violation of the separation of powers, now you start getting into a constitutional crisis.
Can I ask what you think about rescinding the
This
memo?
right here is well within the purview of what the president is supposed to be doing, which is making sure government agencies function well.
What about ignoring the court orders to unfreeze the funding for the EPA and the other?
So my understanding is it's been 2 or 3 days, and it's not clear exactly what was being ordered to be unfrozen.
Yeah,
and
it is very clear. The federal courts are saying, hey, you have to unfreeze the funding for the EPA grant awards that is approved in the Inflation Reduction Act already.
No, the statement was that she goes, I'm rescinding. That goes, anything that if you're freezing due to the memo, then you have to unfreeze. And she's going,
wait.
And so when she's going so he goes, you don't, he goes, so, and they provided no evidence that so they go plaintiff Doe 1 doesn't have access to their funds. And so you'd say, well, obviously that's because of the memo. He goes, well, we don't know why. It's like bullshit. He goes, but if all of them remain frozen, that would be evidence. If one guy is being frozen, there's other reasons why there could be delays. But until we have that kind of information.
So this is beautiful. And it goes to the soy pill's point. So what do you think about this rescinding? So what they did is they said, oh, we're rescinding the memo, but we're not rescinding the policy here. What do you think about that action? Because, I have a quote from a federal district court that is pretty scathing about what they're trying to do here, but you guys seem totally unperturbed. You guys seem incredibly blasé, like, oh yeah, totally normal for him to do that. So here's the quote, right? By rescinding the memorandum that announced the freeze, but not the federal funding freeze itself, it appears that OMB sought to overcome a judicially imposed obstacle without actually seizing the challenged conduct. The court can think of few things more disingenuous. Preventing a defendant from evading judicial review under such false pretenses is precisely why the voluntary cessation doctrine exists. This rescission, if it can be called that, appears to be nothing more than a thinly veiled attempt to prevent this court from granting relief. That is a district court judge. What do you think of that?
I read it too.
Are you concerned that the administration is doing that? Do you think that it's a portent for their unwillingness to listen to the court and trying to evade judicial review? You guys don't have a fucking word to say about it and about what it suggests about the purpose, the nefarious purpose behind all these actions, and you're trying to act like we're stupid.
Why did they say they withdrew it? Do you remember? They said, I'm withdrawing it because of it has become
Who cares? We all know why they did it.
It has become a. Say it. You know it.
Who the f is? They're doing it to evade judicial
what
review.
What is their intention? They told you their intention. What was it?
To evade judicial review. They don't want to be tied up in the courts. They
one word starts with an S.
Stop. They literally want to undo. Dude, stop. They're trying to evade judicial review. Yes or no? Do you agree with that? Trying to evade judicial review?
No. What was the word?
Wait, you don't agree that they're trying to evade judicial review? You disagree with this court?
Yes, I don't agree. Actually, no. So we don't have that.
Holy shit! How naive are you?
It has.
Again, so we rescind the memo, but not the policy, and you're like, oh yeah,
well,
they're
totally
did they rescind the memo?
What did they claim? What do
they didn't rescind the memo because the policy wasn't. I'm saying, well, no. Tell me, you guys both should know this. You know the answer.
Evade judicial review.
I don't know, and I want to
evade judicial
because
review.
They said it became a sideshow. That their thought was saying that because of the exceptions and things that were being done, it was too vague and creating chaos. And so saying we're drawing this shit because apparently people are freezing shit.
They just withdrew the memo.
They're still freezing shit, and they're sort of saying that.
No.
However, the memo is still causing chaos now.
No. They said the policy didn't change.
There can be reasons to freeze.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not moving on. Zetsu, I'm not moving on. I'm not moving on. So we're just going to talk about the purpose of the rescission. You said that they said they rescinded it because it's a sideshow. Do you believe them when they say that, or do you think that it was because to evade judicial review? Wait. I want to ask a question. Do you think that they evaded that they rescinded the memo but kept the policy because it's quote unquote a sideshow, or do you agree with the court when they said it was a clear attempt to evade judicial review? Which do you think is more accurate?
I wouldn't agree with either of those. I'd say I don't believe I have evidence to say that evading a judicial review yet.
You are so that's so crazy.
If all of them remain frozen, then it absolutely is.
Oh
if only one guy gets frozen and everyone else gets unfrozen, then it's not. Do you disagree?
Can both
lactoid and
can both of you explain to me, can you tell me the hypothetical situation which a constitutional crisis, let's say everything we said was true, what would that look like if they really were intending to usurp Congress's federal funding power, if they were intending to consolidate power in the executive branch? What would that look like to you, and what would it look like 8 days in? Because apparently it wouldn't look at all like this. It would be something totally different and totally much more extreme. So please explain to us how we are being hyperbolic, how we are freaking out over nothing, and what it would actually look like if this was really happening.
Exactly how Nixon or Reagan did it would be worse, significantly, obviously.
Oh my God.
I think the answer is pretty straightforward, right? If they if they actually
you agree?
But can we one at a time, please?
Hold on. Can you, when you say how Nixon or Reagan did it, I understand that you understand what you're saying, but can you give us a specific example?
Sure. So Nixon specifically just made the argument that he basically all grants by Congress and budgets were basically up to his discretion. They're guidelines. I can spend it. I cannot spend it. Specifically, it was he tried to just remove half of the budget for the water. They were getting here's $10 billion for water treatment. He goes, I'm cutting it down to $5 billion. Why? Your $10 billion is a suggestion. I don't have to fulfill it. Under Reagan, what he did was he basically had delayed things and saying that you guys are spending too much, and I asked that you guys lower the spending. And so in both those situations, he's saying the actual policy itself, I'm really saying I will not do these funds. This one, he's not saying I will not pay out these things. And because of that,
that's exactly what they're doing, Zetsu. They're saying we're stopping.
They're saying
we're identifying fraud and waste, and we're not going to let it happen. Yeah. They're not saying we're identifying fraud and waste, and we're going to continue spending it. They said we're going to stop it.
They don't have to pay for fraud
Nixon
and waste.
Didn't say fraud and waste. Nixon just said, "I'm just doing it because fuck you."
So the government has an obligation to pay for fraud and waste.
If it's congressionally approved, yeah, actually they do.
But the specific fraud and waste here is not congressionally approved.
So do you think the president?
The president
can determine.
We're talking about the EPA.
I don't even think Congress can approve fraud.
Wait. The president can come to his own determination about what fraud and abuse is and waste is. Right. The president can come to that his own determination and identify things as fraud, waste, and abuse, and then unilaterally choose to ignore it and not pay it. Is that what you're saying, Lactoid?
If you disagree,
no, the courts can overturn him. Yeah, if he identifies fraud and waste,
apparently
and it turns out that it's not fraud and waste, the court can overturn it.
No. The question isn't whether the court. Wait, the question is not whether the court can overturn it. The question is it illegal, unconstitutional, concerning to you, Lactoid? Any of those three?
I guess it depends on if I agree with him that it's fraud and waste.
No, him to have the power to buy his own account, right? It's not about whether or not he's right. Yes, it's about the power.
It does have to do with whoa. It does have to do with whether or not he's right. The executive, of course, has the ability to, again, freeze funds while they're investigating inefficiencies. And if it's like clearly an inefficiency, president isn't mandated to have to pay, spend that money.
Okay, so then that's what Zetsu is saying.
On the inefficiency.
So what Zetsu is saying is the goal is clearly to affect the spending level. And that's what he was trying to distinguish the Reagan example from Trump. And you're saying, no, clearly the executive has some responsibility, even an obligation, you're saying, to identify those areas and to stop the funding.
To identify fraud and waste.
And to affect the spending level. And that's the distinction that's been completely debunked by me just now.
Not necessarily affect the fund, the actual spending level. That I'm a little bit unclear on. I don't, for sure, the executive isn't mandated to spend money on fraud and waste. If there's funds freed up from identifying and removing fraud and waste within the discretion of the executive branch, and then they spend that money on other things, or they partner with other agencies.
It's a who decides question, Lactoid. It's a who decides what's waste.
Yes, and the executive decides these things. That's why the
executive gets to decide.
This is why. Yes, this is why the Impoundment Act literally gives the executive the ability to delay funding. That's why they put that in there. For the executive to identify fraud and waste.
Under the provisions that Congress provides and under the procedures that they provide for.
Which is fraud and waste, which is eliminating fraud and waste. That's specifically identified.
But does the president have to comply? Does the president have to comply with those requirements?
Pisco.
Oh, sorry.
We got to hinge on the fact that Lactoid said fraud and waste is whatever I agree with the president to be, which is the most nebulous, stupid definition
it would be
ever.
A crisis,
and it's only a crisis if I disagree with it. That's what you said.
No. You asked me, would I think it'd be a crisis? I think it would be a crisis if I don't think it's fraud and waste potentially. But ultimately, it's the court that decides whether or not it's fraud.
What if the Democratic president comes in and says, "Hey, all this Defense Department spending, it's all a waste, and we're not gonna spend any. The entire Defense Department is a waste." And so I'm not deleting the agency, but
he disagrees. He disagrees.
I think that you could there's probably a ton of fraud and waste happening in the Pentagon. But yeah, if you went in and then in bad faith removed all of it, I would agree that he's targeting more than just fraud and waste. This is targeting for specific policy purposes.
But who decides if there's something waste or fraud? Who decides?
The Supreme Court, not you or me.
The Supreme Court. So the judicial department, the judicial department gets to decide what's waste and fraud. But what if Congress disagrees? Congress says no, it's not waste. We think it's not wasteful to send money, for example, to Ukraine. We don't think that that's waste. We don't think it's fraud. We think that maybe there's some.
You're right. It's immoral.
There's some 10% that's going to fraud, but that's the cost of doing business in Ukraine. And so we don't think it's waste or fraud, and so we want all that money to go out. And they disagree with the judicial department. They disagree with the executive department. Who wins?
If Congress specifically said identified this as not being fraud and waste, then it'd be I don't think that'd be a good faith argument that, hey, this is fraud and waste.
So who decides?
And I think the court would, and I think the Supreme Court decides ultimately what is fraud and waste. The Impoundment Act specifically gives the executive the authority, the discretion here to freeze funding and identify fraud and waste.
They didn't. Wait. Let's get clear. Lactoid.
That is specifically within the act. The president has the ability to do this, and so.
Lactoid. You understand that they're gonna. The reason they're doing this is they want to challenge the constitutionality of the Impoundment Act. You realize that, right? That they're going to be in court in the next few months arguing that the entire Impoundment Act is unconstitutional. And you're right here like a sucker arguing in the weeds of the Impoundment Act when their entire purpose of doing this, and if you read Russ Vogt and what he's talking about, and with explicit reference to impoundment, he's trying to go to court and saying this entire stuff is unconstitutional. And you're here a sucker.
They might fight for that.
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
wait,
So you're saying
they might fight for that, but hold on. They might fight for that, but the president has authority to freeze funding to investigate fraud and inefficiencies, which is Doge's whole purpose. The whole point is to go in. That's why the Doge employees are going in there, literally to identify.
That is
holy
not
shit,
what's happening.
We are spending all this bullshit. They're literally all this shit they're identifying.
They're tweeting out lies. First of all, they're tweeting out lies about Politico, about
Can you
misrepresenting
give us some examples of those lies?
Yeah. For example,
they're implying that they're spending. Well, go ahead, Pisco.
No,
implying that they're spending. What was it, like $8 million or even, I don't know if it was billion or billion dollars on Politico, and like we're funding journalists when all that is a tool that Politico puts out to analyze legislation that all of these offices, including the people who are complaining about it, their offices use this tool to analyze data on legislation and pretending like this is us funding journalists to
be anti-Trump and be
put out
Democrats.
anti-Trump narratives or something ridiculous because they literally just don't understand. This is Elon's whole MO. It's move fast, break stuff, but not know what the fuck you're doing. Go into a situation, not understand why all this funding is going out, completely remove all of it, and then slowly realize I'm a moron. I have to put all this back. Like, this is what's happening right now, and we're hiding the entirety of this like power grab under it's fraud and waste, and we're just identifying that as if we're not. Yeah, and like this idea that like, it's only been 8 days. Again, Lactoid, I'm sorry, I'm not saying you dodged this question because you didn't get the opportunity to answer. What would this look like if this was 8 days into what we're describing as happening? What would it look like? Because according to Zetsui, it's Reagan would be a little more explicit in pausing the funding and saying, I don't want to do that, as if this is not exactly what's happening with this EPA like court order defying. He's just like, what would actually be happening? What would it look like? Because apparently we're just being hyperbolic.
If it was a delay, if it was not a delay, if it was within 8 days, they said we are like literally deleting this agency, and not just like we're going to move funds, we're going to freeze funding, but if they actually not just say it, okay, if they actually do it, if they actually delete the agency. No.
This isn't my question. This isn't my question. My question is 3 days into this, you wouldn't be able to tell if this is actually what they're doing. You can only know once they've already done it. That's what you're telling me? No matter what they say they're going to do, no matter what Project 2025 lays out, it's only known that they're doing something unconstitutional once it's already happened? Is that what you're proponing?
Not necessarily, right? If they say...
Tell me what it would look like.
Sure. If they say like an explicit detail, because again, this is a crisis, there's a high standard here. If they say like, hey, the Supreme Court sends us an order, and we are, they say, we are not going to comply with this order, fuck the Supreme Court. That would be a big deal. If they say,
ignore the courts, it's Trump administration ignoring the courts right now. Would that not fall under that?
So Robert's warning?
Robert's warning. The actual memo was rescinded in accordance with the court order.
Freezing isn't stopped. They're still freezing the funds. So it doesn't matter. They're ignoring it.
It doesn't unfreeze everything. It says unfreeze everything as it relates if you've been frozen due to the memo.
And if the federal court says, now you have to put this funding back, and they say no, even though the court is mandating it, is that not ignoring the courts?
To the memo. Which one hasn't been unfrozen that was due to the memo?
He just identified it for you.
Funding. Do you want me to send you the link?
Not all of it. The thing is,
it doesn't matter if it's not all of it. They're freezing it. What are you talking about?
There are rational reasons why you can cause delays. That's why the judge specifically said it has to be done. She said specifically, act as though the memo wasn't engaged right now. And again, I would agree with you guys that goes, especially I guess in a couple of days because of the chaos that's happening. But if they don't unfreeze shit, they're not like, well, it's just casual. It goes, bullshit. You're doing it because of the memo. Like, we know you are. And the thing is, and I'd agree with you. The problem is that right now, when they go, one guy's stuff is still frozen.
One guy?
Isn't he saying all of them are? Why aren't they all frozen still?
$5 billion
USAID is completely frozen.
One dude.
You agree? USAID is completely right? Zetsu? That aid is not going out.
I don't think her ruling wasn't on USAID.
I'm asking you the question. Do you think USAID is completely paused?
Separate.
Yeah, but I don't think there's an issue with USAID.
You don't think
the courts? There's no issue with it being frozen.
There's no issue.
I'm saying that the law doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the law, allows, so that budget doesn't have a timeline. It doesn't say, disperse funds by X day. So
I want a commitment.
The court's ruling isn't about that. There's two separate freezes going on.
I want a commitment. A lot of this will be tied up in litigation.
Sure.
But if the policy of the administration, past 365 days is still to pause all U.S. aid, will you say there's a constitutional crisis? Either of you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If he tries, yes. Well, no, it doesn't even have to go that far. Just so
How
we're
far
clear
does
that
it need to go?
we've had case law on this as well. It's going to be a reasonable standard. We have case law on this where it says, can we say, did you fulfill the budget? If they stop until the last week and then suddenly just give it all to one guy, you go, you didn't faithfully adhere to it. The courts have said that basically going, there is an expectation that you go, you might have money left over. You might complete the task at a certain time. There's plenty of discretion you might have that we can't just rule on every single thing. But if you freeze half of it, you're not faithfully doing it. You're just doing it to freeze half of it. And so you're going to have to make a case that says, if I came 10% in our budget, go, hey, I was just being efficient. But if you go, no, I removed 10% because you,
but that's the
then
soy,
that would be.
that,
But if they start
that's
doing
soy
that,
pills point, and it's such a good point, which is the who decides question, right? Congress is the one that's supposed to
Judiciary.
decide what. No, Congress is the
It's
body.
not the-
Congress is
pass
the
a law
body.
then.
Congress is the body that's supposed to decide on efficiency, on fraud, on waste, and to make the determinations of funding. They have the core legislative authority to do that. They're the only ones that are supposed to do that, not the courts and not the president. And we're acting and we're sitting here like it's even conceivable that this is all being done in good faith to put a hammer down on funding for efficiency. How is it efficient for us to, without any notice of the agencies, just immediately stop all federal financial assistance, don't tell the USAID employees don't come into work, do all this subterfuge, do this kind of rescinding little bullshit? And do you guys think that the administration is acting in good faith? I want to ask that. Do you think that the administration is acting in good faith?
Based on the fact that like the investigations that Doge is doing and they're going through data and they're actually acting immediately, right? Yes, it does seem like they've frozen the funding,
Okay.
and they're actually going in and investigating, looking for fraud and abuse, which is what
think-
they statutorily have the right to do. And by the way, when it comes to defining what like legal terms are going to mean here, when it comes to interpreting them, the Supreme Court has the say. They are
say
the
what
ones
the
who are
lie.
going to define.
Wait, no. They say what the lie is, but
and so
Congress.
and so when Congress under the impoundment, and so when the Impoundment Act specifies that the president has his power when it comes to inefficiencies and fraud and abuse, then the Supreme Court is the one to decide what Congress meant by that. Because
Yeah,
the
no,
Supreme
but
Court
they're not
interprets
following
the
the impoundment. I don't know why we have to keep doing this. The court in the
Why
DC
would
district
they?
court, the DC district, yeah. So Zetsu is saying they're not, and you're saying
Balanced
they are.
budget and emergency
wait.
deficit
Let's just be
control
clear.
act.
Wait. Everyone just pause. Everyone pause right now.
I don't understand anymore.
So let's pause.
Just so I get a clear answer.
Zetsu
Raise
just
your
said,
hand if you think they are following the Impoundment Act. Raise your hand. Just raise your hand.
Yeah, I'd say they are.
It's not relevant.
Okay.
Well,
But
just to be
that's
clear,
not the question.
there's a slight disagreement here between me and Zetsui. So I think that the Impoundment Act is still like most of it, including the ability for the president to defer, like that's good law. I understand that the amendments altered the what Congress can do about it, but that doesn't mean that like the rest of it has been removed.
yeah, that was entirely stupid.
You
when he
don't
said
believe
that.
you believe New Haven didn't happen. Okay, fine.
Whoa,
We're arguing that New Haven
Haven
didn't happen. That's
New
fine.
Haven did happen, but that affected my understanding Congress's ability to engage with.
That was Chathaw.
Okay. Did New Haven remove the ability of the president to delay funding?
It substituted it, and then Congress then put it into law in the Budget Act. What is it called? They then enshrined it in Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of
74.
Sorry, other one. Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Requirements Act of 1987.
Okay, so they kept it. They just moved it to a different.
No, because Chathaw struck down part of it. Then in New Haven, they found that they were inextricably linked. This is only as to the deferral. And then because that fell, they then said, well, then does he have any power to defer? And then they created this. The court basically laid out the two sections, and then they put it into that Budget Control Act.
So Zetsu, did you?
Here, I can even-
Your answer to Wick was it's irrelevant whether the president follows the Impoundment Act.
As to deferrals, it's not good law anymore. It's not what you're supposed to follow.
Is your answer that it's irrelevant
what are
whether
we
they follow
supposed
the
to follow?
Well, he is following.
But
Help me understand.
Sure, I guess he's following it, but it's like saying I'm following a law that isn't passed yet. I guess
Okay, is
technically,
he following this 1987 Budget Act?
that
were
one
saying
again because
is
of how loose it
irrelevant.
is. It's an argument. You'd have to make the case as to whether he's doing it for one of those valid reasons or not.
What
If
do
you
you
think
think?
it's bullshit like they do. I'd probably go at the moment 60-40 towards yes, but man, can it tip quickly? Because the fact is, so I think the pause thing was incompetence.
So you're coming in
The
here with a
problem is
very
you go, I'm
strong
giving it a-
opinion, and you're 60-40 on whether or not it actually is a constitutional
What's my strong
crisis.
opinion?
That,
What
that
strong
it's
opinion
not
do
that
you
it's
have?
not a constitutional crisis. But you're coming in here
Correct.
and
This
now
is
you're like
really-
60-40 as to whether or not
Well, no,
it's actually
it's
doing
following
something
the
that's
law.
Because
illegal and subverting
If
Congress.
I don't agree with it, what do you think should happen? What do you think I think should happen? That means I'd make that argument to a court and convince them.
No,
if I
but-
fail to convince them, then I lose, and that's okay.
Is it correct that unless
I think it's bad, but the court disagrees with me, then I'm supposed to lose.
Okay, so the court, whatever the court says, sorry. So long as there's not a court final order on an issue, there's no constitutional crisis. Is that fair?
No, it's saying that no.
Okay, but you said if I disagree with that, I'll go to court. No one's denying you would go to court if you disagree with it. The question is, when can you say that it's a constitutional crisis? And I think you can say it before you go to court if you're, by your own terms and admissions, not following the law. Or 60%.
Is every single Supreme Court case then must be a constitutional crisis? I guess we're always in one.
No. Come on. What we're talking about here.
No. Tell me the Supreme Court case where both sides agree on everything. There's no dispute.
No,
they disagree, which means one of them says they can't just accept the decision.
This is sophistry. We're not talking about any legal issue, any violation of the law, any unconstitutional action. We are clearly talking about, and we laid out at the start, deep structural tensions between the branches that are being undermining the overall structure of the Constitution and our government, which you guys, I think, agreed. If the president is, you don't believe he is currently because you're, I don't know what, but if you believe he's undermining the core appropriation power of Congress, then that clearly would suffice to say so. And you're basically saying, well, there would have to make arguments in courts. No one is saying
unreasonable delay. That's an unreasonable delay is just that. It's an unreasonable delay.
What's reasonable?
But me saying it's unreasonable.
I don't think it's like a threat to the structure here. If the president is allowed, if the law is like the president has the right to delay funds in good faith while they investigate like inefficiencies, etc. Like I don't think it's a constitutional crisis when the question is like, well, what is like I guess good faith here has to go to the Supreme Court. I think that's perfectly fine. Like that is something that the Supreme Court like should be ruling on because, like Zetsui's saying, like this is sort of intentionally vague. But when it comes like if the president says, "You Supreme Court, I am not going to follow your ruling on this." Oh, and also I've deleted 3 agencies while you were gone. Like actually remove them, then we could have a problem.
What if it's a formalism?
Then it'd be a crisis. I'll use the same language here. Yes, it would be a crisis.
So Lactoid, if they're like, okay, the Department of Education still exists, but we're firing all the staff, we're pausing all the funding indefinitely. For no set schedule when it's going to come back. We are reappropriating the buildings for a different purpose. At what point were you like, okay, they are saying the Department of Education still exists, but that's clearly just a formalism and it's effectively gutted. Would that point ever exist, or would he literally have to say the Department of Education is no more?
I think that this could happen in a couple ways. It could be that the Department of Education is like actually removed. It could be that funding is like basically delayed indefinitely beyond.
My hypothetical. They fire everybody. They
fire everybody.
They pause every single spending on it. They shut down all the websites.
For how long?
They don't say. They don't say.
Okay.
No, let's say they say it. They say it.
No, let's say they don't
by the
say
time
it.
Comes back.
I just want to do that one first, and then sorry. I thought that was
sure.
to talk about.
Let Pisco do his own hypothetical.
My bad. I went off of you. Soypill, you're doing great, and I love you.
No, you're good.
But my question is, let's say they don't say it. They just say, we're firing every single person in the Department of Education. We're pausing all of their funding indefinitely. We're not going to tell you when it ends. And all the websites are shut down where we have the executive. We have the power to do that. And we're using their buildings for housing for migrants. Would you say, okay, constitutional crisis because you can't destroy an agency? No, you wouldn't.
If they're using it for if they're using it for like migrants and the migrants like living situation is not planned to expire like by the timeline set, then maybe
there's no timeline set.
Be very strong. In terms of like, well, there is a timeline set, right? With the end of the fiscal year at the very least. And then if we want to go into the original Impoundment Act, we're talking about.
But they fired all the people who they fired all the people who would even receive the funds, right? They fired all the people who would they closed the bank accounts of the Department of and they closed the bank accounts of the Department of Education, so they can't. They're not even in a position to receive the funds, and they made it so that they burned all the records.
I'm trying to answer the question. If they did that, and then they did like nothing in the meantime, and then like, wow, like a week has gone by, they've done nothing, they've just kept it shuttered, and then another week has gone by and they've done nothing, they just kept it shuttered, then like the argument for it being in bad faith, for it not being to investigate inefficiencies, but instead for it being for like a sole like policy reason, then that argument gets stronger and stronger the more time goes on. To the point where I'd be convinced.
If the inefficiency is, I think this entire department is a waste and I want to get rid of it.
Which is what they're saying.
But if immediately,
which is what they're saying,
if immediately special government employees that report to the president are going in and like combing through the records during this time period, looking for waste, looking for fraud, identifying waste, identifying fraud, reporting this back to the president, reporting this to the Congress, then this, I think, provides a very strong argument that this is in good faith to remove government waste
the
and abuse.
standard is,
U.S. aid
as
is
long
full
as
of
they're
abuse and
still
waste.
looking at it, it's not in bad faith. But whatever they come out, no matter what they say in terms of what is waste and inefficiency, which, by the way, they say the entire department is inefficiency.
Yes.
Or they're coming out and saying, oh, all this spending on Politico, which they literally don't understand, is waste and inefficiency and fraud and corruption.
And they're clearly lying about
as long
this
as
because
they're
they've been
saying that they're doing it, then somehow it's okay and it's not in bad faith.
If they're sending in special government employees to investigate fraud and waste, and in the opinion of the person who just got elected, yes, this is fraud and waste, right? I'm the executive. I make
so
these
whatever
calls.
Trump says
hold on.
fraud and waste.
I make these calls, right? The president's well within his rights to be doing this. If the courts review the actions and decide, hey, like the executive here did not identify fraud and waste, there was actually a policy reason that was underneath all of this, then he would lose.
Who cares about the policy reason?
And then
What's the policy?
if he ignored
No, go back. What's the policy? What's the policy reason? What's the difference between I think the entirety of the Department of Education is a fraudulent, wasteful organization and I want to get rid of it, and what's a policy that is different from that?
Sure.
Like, oh, my policy is that the education should be different. Like, what's
that's
this?
kind of to my question.
Yeah.
Just real quick, I'll let you answer, but I want to maybe tackle it from a slightly different angle, but it's related. Can Trump, in your opinion, say the Department of Education is fraudulent and wasteful, so we're just going to end it?
So the president has to. You can't just end it, the whole thing. You can't.
Okay, so we can't.
Okay, you can't just end the whole thing. But what you could.
What does that mean? Here's what you could. What do you mean you can't just end it?
You can't just say like the entire department is
like
officially gone.
Thanos snap it out of existence.
Yeah. You can't Thanos snap it, right?
Or gut it, right?
He can't do that. So what would he do if he wanted to
on.
completely eliminate it, but still within
the
legal bounds?
Now the agency is like full of fraud or anything like along those lines. He can go in and he can like meticulously go through and remove the fraud. The agency itself has a.
We can't keep letting you do this. You can remove the fraud. What's the fraud? He says, I want to get rid of all of it.
Everything.
Which is, first of all, way past your standard of whether or not he said, I want to delete it all. He's literally saying that, but now he's doing it under the guise of fraud and waste. What is fraud and waste? If he just says the whole thing is fraud and waste, now that's okay? He can just get rid of the whole thing?
Nope. Do you know
Why
what you'd do if he did that? What would you do? Well, no, what would you do? So let's say he does that. What would you do?
You say impeachment?
There's an action. No.
What would you? I don't know. I'm not playing 20 questions.
You'd say that
Can I
his actions were not being done in good
the
faith.
courts that he
And
is
then if he
ignoring
said,
right
I
now.
fired
Go through the
everyone
courts.
just because you all, and they all said,
so
they go,
only if he admits
let me ask a
literally,
question.
I'm
No.
doing this for no
You just said he
reason,
deleted
is it
all of
suddenly
it.
illegal?
I
If he just says,
wanna-
actually,
all
it's
of it
because
being-
there's so much fraud, there's so much waste, and we're getting rid of all of it, and he cuts 95% of it, suddenly that's okay. Because you said it was fraud and waste, right?
You think you can convince a judge of that?
Well, he would have to.
First
He
of
would
all,
have to
he's appointing
spend
a bunch of loyalist judges,
purpose.
and second of all, he's ignoring the judges that are saying to
And
do
he
otherwise. So
said
what does
there's
it
so
matter?
much evidence of him
he'd
saying
have to-
Preliminary injunction.
He'd
And
have
the
to.
thing is,
He'd have to spend the money to like advance the purpose. And so there's ways you could do this. You could partner with the Department of State, for example.
I'm putting money
and
into the charter
Department of
schools.
State.
All the money's in the charter
State,
schools
The
now.
Department of State could be using funds from USAID to accomplish the purpose, a shared purpose between the Department of State and USAID. That is a perfectly fine use of the funds within USAID.
That's fine
right?
for
if trying to find it. But I got a question for you guys actually, because that's a good question, right? What if an agency, let's say USAID, for example, like let's say Doge went through the books and released all the spending, and hypothetically, you got to play the game here, okay?
Yeah.
Hypothetically, what if all of it was actually like obviously fraud and waste to the point that you guys would like 100% agree, yeah, this is fraud and waste?
Yeah, you have to go to Congress.
Because the Impoundment Act gives the president the authority to suspend operations and to hold freezing or free funding in order to.
If you follow the law by the Congress,
wait, no, I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing with you, Lactoid.
Let him finish.
In order to address,
I can just agree.
I know. I get to near the end, and you're like, I know what he's going to say. Just please, maybe not everybody in the audience does. Okay, so when it comes to, I got to freeze the funding in order to, address this fraud and waste. If all of it was fraud and waste, that's a good question. Like, would you mandate? No, the president has to spend money on overt fraud and waste.
Yes. Okay, in a magical Candyland world where the entirety of the DOE is fraud and waste, and he exposed that through releasing the records, I would be okay with him freezing that funding, addressing this, and going through Congress and saying, hey, look at this.
Under
this is
the
what is
law.
happening. we need to change this,
The law-
and not,
the law doesn't
hey,
require
I'm
that he has
going
to go to
to
Congress.
delete this entire organization. It's a fraudulent organization. It's gone, which is what he is saying. Like, you're arguing way to the left of what Trump's even saying at this moment anyway.
I want to clarify. I just want to clarify that.
Wait. I want to address that.
Oh
that
my
specifically.
God.
So you're saying he could freeze the funding perhaps
under
longer
the
than 8
Impoundment
days.
Act.
Yes, under the Impoundment Act, he could freeze the funding because all of it's fraud and waste. And then after all the fraud and waste has been identified, probably takes longer than 8 days, he would go to Congress and then ask the whole agency to be deleted.
Wait a second. So yes. So the president, right?
I was asking
if he follows, this, I want to give you my opinion. All right. If he follows a congressional statute that allows him to pause aid, he's obviously within his rights. If Trump were following if Trump were following the Impoundment Act, we'd have a different situation. He's not following the Impoundment Act, but yes, if he followed the Impoundment Act and he brought all the evidence to Congress and Congress did not act, he is bound by that. Congress is the one who gets to decide. So at the end of the day, it could be definitive proof and the president shows it to Congress and Congress is like, yeah, we'll deal with it next year. Do you think the president can just stop it, even if it's provable, verifiable fraud? He follows the Impoundment Act, and Congress is like, we're going to release the funds anyway. Obvious fraud, but we don't care because we're just evil people. You were like, the president could still pause it.
If they said, we agree this is fraud and abuse under the definition we put in the Impoundment Act, but we're going to fund it anyway, that goes to the question, does Congress have the authority to fund fraud and abuse, which I don't think they do.
No. Who decides? Is the president gets to unilaterally?
Supreme Court.
No, but let's say the Supreme Court says political question. We're not handling it. The Supreme Court doesn't handle it. You don't get that out. My question is, what do you think is constitutional? Do you think the president, on his own account, gets to say after he's showed the definitive proof of fraud and he's followed the procedures of the Impoundment Act, and Congress says, yeah, we're releasing the funds anyway? In that situation, do you think the president has the right to say, nope, I am subverting Congress and we're stopping the funds anyway?
I think if the president I'll go through the whole scenario. I think if the president in good faith freezes the funds and then identifies everything, might take longer than 8 days, and then goes to Congress and Congress looks at everything. If in scenario A, they said this is fraud and waste, you're right, but you were going to fund it anyway, then I don't think the president, then I don't think the president has is required to fund it at that point, because the Impoundment Act specifically allows the president to delay in the cases of fraud and abuse.
But Congress can
now. In scenario B, if Congress says we've reviewed all this, and in our opinion, all the things that you have identified are specifically not fraud and abuse, so you better go back and fund them. Then I think it probably
that is dangerous. What was just told to you, right? What was just told to you is
dangerous.
It is dangerous. What you just said is that the president,
more so than you guys.
Let me explain why. Pisco, explain why.
Right, because the question is who decides. All right, here we're inventing these hypotheticals where there's perfect information, and so obviously it's not going to be in the real world. But you use the perfect information. It's very helpful to see where we're at. So yes, even assuming Congress sees this obvious case of fraud, 99% fraud, complete destruction. Like it is horrible what's going on. He follows the Impoundment Act in that he initially freezes it, but he's time limited under the Impoundment Act, and he has to go through the procedures. And the end result is Congress does not sign off to the impoundment of those funds and doesn't sign off to those being canceled. And so under the procedures, the normal procedures, the funds should be released because Congress says even though there's fraud and abuse, we've seen you go through the procedures, but the process is at an end. We're releasing the funds. At that point, does the president get to say, no, I'm not letting that happen?
You re-asked the question.
Right.
Does Congress have the right to order funding for what they themselves specifically say is fraud and abuse?
That's not the question. The question is,
that is the question.
That is not the question.
That's critically important.
No, that's not the question I'm asking.
Because I laid out two scenarios.
Sorry.
Lactoid. It's a dumb semantic where only in the scenario where Congress is like, yeah, we're evil and we love committing fraud, is this somehow now something that will go back to the president?
But I'll bite it.
That's not how it works.
I'll bite it 100%.
When is he not chomping at the bit?
No, I'll absolutely bite it. That the determination over where funds goes is Congress's alone. And if it's the case, right, you could say it's unconstitutional or illegal for Congress to approve fraud, but that's not a justiciable question. That's not a question for the president to decide. And even if it is illegal for Congress to do in terms of constitutionality, right? It's almost like an illegal impeachment, right? Or an illegal pardon, or it's in their sole discretion, the use of funds. There's nothing more core than that. And you're somehow suggesting that the president in the real scenario would be, I'm up to my own discretion unilaterally to decide this is going to waste and fraud. And you're saying that there could be a role for the president there. That's so dangerous.
No. Like I said, scenario B, if Congress says this is not waste and fraud, like we've reviewed everything, this is not waste and fraud, if they were to determine this to not be waste and fraud, I would think that would be the much more likely scenario than scenario A, which is that they're like the comic book villains or whatever.
So under scenario A, wait, can we stay in scenario A?
You cut me off halfway, and then you miss my point, and then you have to re-ask the question 2 minutes later, right? This happens consistently. If in scenario B this happens, then yeah, I would agree. At that point, the president, because it's been identified specifically as by Congress very overtly, at that point, the president can't say, well, this is fraud and waste. This is fraud and
But under scenario A, can he ignore the Impoundment Act?
Well, he wouldn't be ignoring the Impoundment Act.
No, he would be, because the Impoundment Act, yes, it allows him to pause, but he has to. It's time limited, and it's pursuant to the procedures that Congress sets out, and those procedures culminated in a process in which the funds are purported to be released. I'm asking, can he violate the law and do an additional impoundment?
The Impoundment Act, like it's time limited in the sense that, okay, there's funding given to this agency, and that he has to spend this money or whatever, but he doesn't have to spend it on fraud and inefficiency, because the whole point of the Impoundment Act was to give the president the discretion in order to identify and remove fraud and inefficiency, right?
So does the president...
Wait.
Don't make a cogent point.
The whole point. Oh yeah, you're right. His point just happened to be in the middle of my sentence. Great.
Because your point is like 15 minutes long. Sorry.
Bro, really? You don't think Pisco stock? Whatever. Okay. The whole point of the Impoundment Act here is to give the president discretion to identify fraud and waste and not fund it. That's the whole point of the statute. And so if Congress says like this is fraud and waste, you have Congress like contradicting themselves a little bit, I guess. But if Congress would have the authority, I guess, to allocate funding for U.S. aid in this hypothetical, but under their own statute, the president would still have the ability to freeze it
for 45 days. For 45 days.
Right, for funds, but specifically the freezing is to identify and remove fraud and waste.
Yeah, but only for 45 days.
Yeah, for the non-fraud and waste part. You can identify the fraud and waste during the 45 days. And by the way, the 45 days, as Zetsui said, that's not like in play anymore. It's until the end of this year.
Wait,
here's the deal.
Who says it's not in play?
Hold on. Let me try. Lactoid, okay? So Congress authorizes the president to use military force on a country, say, hey, we're going to authorize you for a month to go into this country and deal with the terrorists that are there. There's a terrorist cell in this country that we really want to go after. We really want to get out. So we give you 30 days to go in and take them out. Congress authorizes that, gives them there. The president goes in with the forces. He goes for 30 days, but they don't get all the terrorists. Does he have to re-up to get more approval, or can he just stay there because, well, they told me to get the terrorists, and he could just ignore the time?
That's a tough hypo.
It's if Congress says like you're authorized to go into here
for 30 days.
There is like a national security question at this point.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
Okay,
so,
because it's not as clear, right? There's overlapping. This is why it's a good hypo.
I'll still answer Wick's question, right? Let's assume there's no constitutional national security questions at play, which the president, of course, as the founders intended to be a vigorous president, has the right to be able to vigorously protect the United States and enforce its laws. But in this case, let's assume that this is not the case, and the president is a weak little boy and can't do anything besides unless Congress specifically authorizes him to do it. And then Congress says, okay, go in there for 1 month to get terrorists. You can go in there for 1 month to get terrorists. I think the way that's worded, it's very clearly you can go in there for 1 month to get terrorists. If, for example, if they said, go in there for 30 days to get terrorists and you can't leave no matter what until you get every single terrorist, then at that point, I don't know. Because let's say 30 days has passed, but they've identified 14 terrorists that they haven't got yet. Now you have Congress contradicting itself, which is exactly the problem I had before. If we're talking about Congress admitting there's fraud and waste and then
That's
affirming
not,
it.
wait,
It's a bizarre
that's not
kind
what
of
this is.
situation.
So wait, there's overlapping. It's a good question because it gets to a lot of these tensions where there's overlapping spheres of authority. Yes, Congress declares war, Congress funds, but the president also absolutely, as Lactoid says, I agree, there's a national security role for the commander in chief to have, independent of Congress, overlapping with Congress. Sometimes there's unclears, certain things. You can think of a law that Congress passed that unconstitutionally binds the commander in chief, or gives him an impossible command, or usurps the president's role as commander in chief. And so those are all very complicated questions. What's not complicated is funding. Funding is in the exclusive domain of Congress. That's an exclusive authority. If you guys are okay with this core executive theory for the president, this is core legislative authority. No one has this power but Congress. And Congress, in its infinite wisdom, said, okay, well, there are things that could come up in which the president, we want to give him flexibility. So Congress imposed its own law and of procedures, and it says, okay, you have to come to Congress first, you have to communicate to us first, and in certain circumstances you can put a hold on funding for 45 days, and it's for specific things, right, like waste and fraud and things like that. But what we're talking about here, one, is the situation in which he is not complying with the Impoundment Act. He didn't, right? This wasn't a communique to Congress, like acknowledging Congress's role. He's sending a memo out to executive branches. So he's not following the Impoundment Act. And number two, by Lactoid's own admission, not all of the funding, federal financial assistance, is waste and fraud, and not even conceivably that it's a majority of it under the statutory definition. I don't think that he would bite that bullet. And so it's clear the Impoundment Act is not being followed. The time limitations on the Impoundment Act are not being followed. And so can we stop with this pretense that introduced by Zetsu that it's conceivable that the Impoundment Act is being followed? It's not. And Trump is specifically trying to attack it.
Pisco, would you follow the Impoundment Act?
Yes, I would. Yes.
Would you be like, if you're president, you follow it?
If Trump was following the impoundment,
you would defy the court. You defy everything
I
else
would not defy. No, I would not defy the Impoundment Act. I would not defy the Impoundment Act.
No, yeah, no.
If
you follow it directly, right? Regardless of what happened afterwards.
If Trump were following the Impoundment Act, we wouldn't have a problem. I wouldn't be here telling you that it's such.
I would.
You would be saying that it's a constitutional crisis if he followed the law.
If he followed the Impoundment Act after the Supreme Court and the District Court and Congress
that's
have
what I'm
all
talking
said that
about.
Section 1013 isn't there.
Wait.
To be clear,
oh my God.
To be clear, for my clarity, please.
The fact that Pisco's sitting here saying he would disobey Congress and the Supreme Court and the District Court.
That's literally not what I said.
Because I have to ask,
he's absolutely saying, if he's saying he'd follow Section 1013 of the Impoundment Act, he's just saying New Haven doesn't count. He doesn't care.
No, I'm saying.
Wait, hold on. If Zetsu was operating under the idea that the Impoundment Act is no longer law, then why are we even talking about whether or not he's following it? Like he said, it doesn't matter. Like we could just move on from that, right?
No, you keep talking about the Impoundment Act, saying he's not following it.
Okay,
he is not following
Congress
it.
enacting Section 1013.
Okay, Zetsu, please. I understand your argument, but I'm going to assume, for the sake of argument, because I'm just not familiar with New Haven. I'm not familiar with these things, right? I am somewhat familiar with the Impoundment Act. So just to ask Pisco directly. So your argument, as I understand it, is that he is not Trump is not following the Impoundment Act.
Correct.
Because he has not set the specific date which this freeze will end.
Multiple ways he's not following it, right?
Okay, yeah, please
answer that particular question.
Yeah, I will. Yes, is the answer to that specific one as well. It's not limited to 45 days. Under the Impoundment Act, it needs to be 45 days. It is not. It was not sent to Congress initially. This freeze. It was not a communique or a presidential message to Congress. It was the OMB from the president, which is required. The OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, sent all hands email to the executive branch. So it's not an external. Executive to legislative, it's within the external branch. So he's not following that provision. He's going beyond the scope of the Impoundment Act, which is supposed to be for specified purposes and not just a wholesale pausing of all federal financial assistance as defined in the CFR. And so there are multiple ways. And the court, by the way, the two courts now that have struck down this memo, or sorry, should have put a TRO and an order pausing it, they have, in order to have that pause, you need to show a likelihood of success on the merits. And they have shown a likelihood of success on the merits. If it were the case, right, that Trump were following the Impoundment Act, and it were clear that he was following the Impoundment Act, and that these courts were convinced that he was following the Impoundment Act, they wouldn't have held that he's not following the Impoundment Act. They wouldn't have issued a TRO. If he were following the law, what basis would there be to issue a TRO. So the courts have found and have paused these memorandums specifically because it's illegal, specifically because it's not allowed both under Article 1 and the Impoundment Act. So this is a complete fantasy, and I believe that too. Now, I'm not familiar with the New Haven case, so I can't speak to it, but I bet you if I take 10 minutes now to get into it, he is misrepresenting the case. I've caught him on so much bullshit of him misrepresenting cases time and time again. He's not a good reader of law.
You're saying New Haven, no.
Yeah.
Make that claim.
Yeah.
You're saying New Haven is
I
not regarding
absolutely
Reagan
will.
in
I
Section
absolutely will.
1013 of the Impoundment Act.
I absolutely will. I absolutely will. But let's just be.
And also, just to
let's just be
I
clear.
just want to add
either.
supplementary,
Everything
like
you're discussing
the
it is wrong
Impoundment
as
Act
well. They didn't even
specifically says
read
you
it.
have to specify the duration of the proposed partial year deferrals, which of course he didn't do, which is like already
And?
just
What does
on
that
the
mean?
first line. And what?
Therefore
and
what?
Therefore,
If he doesn't,
and therefore he's
transit
not
those things,
following it.
And who has the right to raise that? You? Courts?
courts.
No.
The
Congress.
courts that he is
That
ignoring.
transmission is for Congress to make their decision. If they've received whatever the they want and say now we're okay with it, the idea that the courts are going to go, you know what, you didn't really write the right top head of the memo, so we're overriding Congress. No,
Wait.
the transmission is for the benefit of Congress, for them to understand why you're deferring funds.
And they didn't do that,
if
right?
If he doesn't do it properly, then Congress would have good cause to just say F it off, or that you
Right,
can't
and so
defer the funds.
in your
But it wouldn't
mind,
be for
it's
you
good
to
faith to
challenge
use
it.
the magic words waste and fraud. And once I've said those words, I can deny all
I'm
funding.
dealing with people who don't understand any of it. Like
I guess maybe I don't understand, but I'm asking you whether or not that
even
is somehow
even the whole
justified if you just
45-day
say the
thing.
word
Do you guys
waste and
understand that
fraud.
there's a difference between wait, do you guys understand
deferral
even
and a
within the
rescission.
Impoundment Act, those are different things, right? And they are handled differently even within the Impoundment Act. Do you understand that?
So what is it your suggestion that this is not governed by the Impoundment Act?
Didn't say that either. No.
So what are you saying?
I'm wasting my time with people who can't even read. The 45-day thing has to do with rescissions, not deferrals. The deferrals is Section 1013, which is exactly what New Haven was about. That Reagan tried to delay funds. Then he said he relied specifically on that section to defer funds. Then the district court said, sorry, it's already been the veto part of the one house veto thing has been shot down by Chad Haw, and they're inextricably linked. So the whole thing falls. And then they subsequently say you can now do non-policy based. There's those two things. I linked it in the group chat. I can link you something. I have a thing written by the guy who wrote the Impoundment Act as to how pissed he was over Chad Haw in New Haven.
Yeah. So would
And the
you
thing
say
is, again, the 45-day thing is rescissions only. He hasn't rescinded anything. He's only tried to do it. Also, the policy isn't direct. They allocate funds to like homelessness, not to like Pisco's homeless fund. And so if there's fraud, it wouldn't be within homelessness. It would be within your actions. And he could stop that, but he would still have to allocate the funds to homelessness.
So do you think that there has been a permanent impoundment or rescission?
There's not been a rescission. It's currently in a deferral, basically, what you'd see.
How do you know that?
The fact that he hasn't It'd be based on, so the reading of it, them saying like, hey, stop all funds and get to me something within 2 weeks. I think a reasonable interpretation of that is that basically they plan to basically stop for the purpose of reviewing those things. That would be my interpretation of it.
That's your interpretation of it?
So when we say it's, I think if I'm being good faith, why would someone say, get me your, I'm freezing the funds, I want to review things, get me a report in 2 weeks? Why would they ask him for 2 weeks if they go, it's indefinite?
I don't know.
Maybe give it to me whenever, years from now.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe if they laid out this specific plan in this giant document and then elected all the
if you
people who
wanna
wrote
argue
it
that they're
into positions of
incompetent, I'm
power
with you.
that said like, hey, we're specifically trying to...
I agree with the unfreezing. I agree with the judge's order.
Freezing.
They gave no rational basis for why they were for doing the review doesn't justify the freeze.
Are you aware of the January 20th executive order?
Which one? There's a lot of January 20th orders.
You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Specifically reevaluating and realigning United States foreign aid.
I've read all the executive orders, but you have to be more specific.
Okay. Specifically reevaluating and realigning United States foreign aid, Section 3, 90-day pause in United States foreign development assistance for assessment of programmatic efficiencies and consistency with United States foreign policy.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the freeze. The freeze is indefinite.
Hold on. Is the freeze? If we're looking here at like,
are
what is
you
a
arguing
good faith?
that executive order is the freeze that they're doing?
Well, I don't know. I don't think the executive order is
executive
the
order?
specific freeze on U.S.
Also, a
aid.
90-day freeze is more than 45 days.
Again,
That one's
45 days isn't required anymore. If we're talking about a 90-day pause, we're talking about whatever. If we're talking about a 90-day pause on the executive order, that my understanding is the authority that they're using to stop programs like USAID. why 90 days seems like a very specific number. I think like
Yeah, we're talking about
with
the
this-
freeze.
with
The
this-
freeze.
right. But if the freeze comes from we're going to
That's
pause
not where the freeze
United
comes from.
States Foreign Development Assistant for assessments of programmatic.
So that is not
programmatic
where the
efficiency and
freeze
consistency,
comes from.
90 days.
That is
I'm
not
saying,
where the
like,
freeze
again,
comes from.
Wait. We're looking. What I'm saying is that we have to look at things in good faith. Okay. And the question is he operating within good faith? If he has an executive order saying we're going to freeze for 90 days to evaluate things, and then he also, within like the timeline here that we're talking about, freezes U.S. aid funding, then it would appear that the intention here is to freeze it for a temporary time period to evaluate its inefficiencies.
And
Yeah,
and when the
yeah,
inefficiency
no.
is declared to be the entire thing, get rid of it. Then what? Because again,
Yeah,
like we keep coming back to this magic
Yeah,
word.
we
where
were
if I
talking
say
about that.
that, if I say that
Recession.
fraud and
It's
inefficiency
so
is
sick.
all of
That
it, then
part of
suddenly
the
that's
Empowerment
okay.
Act is still good.
Hmm?
It's only Section 1013 that Haven dealt with. Rescission and deferrals are different things. If he turns a deferral into a rescission, different rules apply.
I'm not even talking
Define
about the Empowerment Act
rescission
at this
for me,
point.
Zetsu, right now, and versus deferral.
A bill or joint resolution which only rescinds in whole or in part budget authority proposed to be rescinded into So
Wait.
basically,
Can you
basically
read that
rescinding whole or in
slower?
part budget authority proposed.
Can you reread that slower? Reread it.
Sure.
Understand.
Basically,
Please.
a
I'm slow. I'm not a lawyer. Okay, you gotta give.
All right.
You gotta be a little lenient.
rescission
With
bill. But it basically goes anything where it goes, it rescinds in whole or in part budget authority that's been been allocated.
Wait, can you
Rescission,
That's
read
like-
it?
rescission is the
Sorry,
president.
I'm reading
saying-
from the actual bill.
Is that, is
I'm
that a
reading from the actual
definition
Empowerment
explain
Act.
it. I can explain it in
deferment,
2
or is that a
sentences.
definition of rescission?
No, I
No,
can
no.
explain-
Rescinding means canceling. So if I say, so let's say that you allocate $10 million to homelessness, and I say I want you to pull. I don't want to do that. I want to do $5 million. I'm asking you to rescind $5 million. If I say I'm going to defer, I have issues with some of the programs that were like, I think Pisco's homeless thing is not doing things I like, and I'd rather give it to Lactoid. So I'm going to defer my payments now, and next month I go, you know what? I don't like Pisco's. I'm giving it to his instead. I've deferred it because I still spent the money. A rescission means I'm not going to spend the money on the policy. If you read the budgets don't say, they say something like that, like $10 million to homelessness, $10 million to people who are doing ventures for the needy, especially women, which is a weird one. And then it gives a bunch of restrictions. They can't go to Iran. They can't help the Palestinian Authority. And so if the president does an analysis and finds out that like, oh, hey, we're helping out those in need, but it appears you're giving money to the PA, he can just cancel that without going to Congress because the bill says you can't give it to the PA.
Can a deferral be indefinite?
Under the rules, so like you have to transmit that to Congress, so like it would be in violation of that part of it. We're saying like what you're supposed to transmit to Congress.
Wait. Can a deferral
Congress would have
be?
good cause
Can a deferral be indefinite?
within the realm of reality? Yes.
No, under the law.
Things can be indefinite. Under the
Is
law,
it
it would be a
allowed-
violation of the transmit. I mean,
allowed under the
it'd be a
law.
problem for
Is
Congress.
legally, the question here, let me try. The question that Pisco's asking is legally, could Trump make an indefinite deferral?
Indefinite, again, colloquially, no. Technically, no. Indefinite, yeah. So colloquially, no. Technically, yes.
Technically, he can just say this is a deferral.
Technically, he
not
can't. So
colloquially.
technically, it'd be a violation. Colloquially, we don't mean infinite. We just means that, like, he said
not- he
defer for
doesn't
90
say
days,
when
but he
it's
doesn't
gonna
say
end.
when he'll get you to afterwards,
So
so, it doesn't
he-
tell us an exact date.
Here are the word games that's being played right here.
What's the word game?
Indefinite simply means we don't know when the end date's going to be. That's what indefinite means. It doesn't mean it will go on forever.
Correct.
What it means,
That's what I mean. I'm
right now-
using the
Yes.
term
So
indefinite.
Right now, it means right
If I
now.
say-
Hold on. It means right now we don't know specifically when it will end. It could end tomorrow. It could end
Well,
a week.
no.
It could end a week from now. That's what indefinite means.
You
And
can
so-
reasonably interpret it.
Yes, that's what.
Yeah,
Yes,
we are focusing.
that's what it means, right? And
I'll
so
let you finish real quick, Lactoid, but I just want to make it clear we have spent the entire time on the freeze, and there are a couple other things that people want to talk about,
Sure.
such as the IG
Yeah, so
firing and
I
the
where I'm
ban.
reading it says that deferrals are temporary delays, and that it doesn't seem
Yeah.
like I will get the official language of the definition here, but I don't think that it's plausible that a deferral could be indefinite, where you're just talking about like something that could conceive it with no specific end date.
an indefinite,
Sure you could.
temporary.
Wait, no. If you did, no. Indefinite
Wait.
just means that- so-
Indefinite can
go
mean
ahead.
temporary, right?
Sure, but it seems like the
Yes, thank you.
Wait.
Jesus, it took forever to get there.
Indefinite can be temporary. It could also be permanent. Fair.
Correct.
It
We would have to
could,
assess
but he
those-
can't do it forever.
Okay,
That would be
but
illegal.
why?
Well, no. You would assess what he said.
Is it
So he
illegal?
Says,
Zetsu just said
he said
that
freeze go off of he goes, give me something in 2 weeks so I can review it and we'll take action then. The assumption is that you're going to do something in 2 weeks.
He's indicated 90 days on his executive order.
They didn't say that in the freeze. In the freeze, they didn't say we'll come back in 2 weeks.
But on the executive order, he indicated we're going to be freezing this
the
for 90 days.
executive order. Wait. No, we're stopping right now. Wait,
there's a 90 day and the 14.
You need to stop. You need to stop with the executive order, right? He's purposely lying to the audience. The executive order only pertains, first of all, it's 90 days just for reviewing foreign aid.
That's the one.
And it's not what we're talking about. So shut the up about the executive
order.
We're talking about the spending freeze. We're talking about the spending freeze. Stop trying to confuse the audience. We're talking about the spending freeze from the OMB.
The argument here is that there are two different spending freezes going on, one through the memo and one through this executive.
We've been talking about the OMB.
The one that's being ruled on is we've been going back and forth. The aid one for U.S. aid is in 90 days. The one the court's dealing with has to do with grants. And that one is the 14-day one.
No.
Am I
the
wrong?
One the courts are, yes, you are completely, of course you're wrong. Yes, you're clearly wrong. You're always wrong. Yes, it deals with all federal financial assistance as defined in the OMB memo. Okay?
There's two of them.
Yeah,
what do you mean there's
one is
the one that was sent, the 2-page memo that everyone's talking about, that we've been talking about this entire time?
You guys have been going
it's not just grants.
No, the executive order was brought up like 10 minutes ago.
The executive order was a new thing that he brought up.
Now that we've established.
Oh my God.
Now that we've established that indefinite is temporary, or could be temporary. In this case, it is temporary. And by the way, if it's not, then it'd be illegal. Then it'd be in a constitution. Then it'd be a constitutional crisis. If it turns out to not be temporary.
Yeah. So as long as he gets it back at day 364, you're cool.
So
and spend all
you think I can't show you two memo? I can send you both of you guys. I can send in the group chat right now.
About like any of the other
deferrals.
Things that wait.
So
fucking insane.
Here I have it. Wait. I just want to be clear. I have it here.
Oh yeah, sure.
I'm last one on this subject. Then we'll get to the other ones. But go ahead. Please go.
So deferrals need to specify the time period which the budget authorities propose to be deferred.
Yeah, the letter to Congress.
And it needs to be sent to Congress. So by your own admission, right? So you agree, don't you? Don't you all both agree now? Because there needs to be a message under any of these, the use of the Impoundment Act. Don't you all agree that the Impoundment Act,
Congress would have
the Impoundment Act, as narrowed by judicial rulings, has been violated?
That's not a violation. No, that would be for Congress. If Congress has a problem with that, yes.
Wait. Stop. Wait. I just told you that there is a specific procedural requirement that the president transmit to the House of Representatives and the Senate a special message clarifying the period of time which the budget authorities propose to be deferred for deferrals, right? And that.
They didn't do a special transmission.
There was never a transmission or message to Congress. So you would agree, wouldn't you? You would agree. Wouldn't you that
you would agree that the judge should not care about that at all?
You would agree, wouldn't you, that the president is not following the Impoundment Act?
Yes, Congress. So that would be good cause for Congress to refuse it.
Thank you very much.
The judge should not care about that at all.
We'll move on.
Okay.
If the judge took action on that, that'd be unbelievable.
I do want to talk
concerning
about some of the other things. So when we talk about whether or not we're in a constitutional crisis, the freezing has been the focus. But I believe Soy Pill has a couple other pieces of evidence to enter into the discussion about why he thinks this is a constitutional crisis. And for the sake of my audience, right, maybe we can focus on those a little bit tonight. Soy Pill, you wanted to make your argument?
Yeah,
Go
sure.
ahead.
I'd love to hear Lactoid or Zetsu's opinions on whether or not you can just use an executive order to subvert the 14th Amendment. I'd love to hear what they think about firing all the attorney generals or the investigative the IGs who, without the 30-day congressional pre-approval or notice, like all these other things that are consolidating power into the executive branch that apparently are just not being followed, and obviously being countered by courts and blocked by courts, and apparently based on the initial claim that at least Zetsu said at the beginning, as long as the court can even attempt to stop him, it's not a constitutional crisis, that he is trying to consolidate all this power. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on those.
Go ahead, Lactoid.
In terms of you're talking about the EO and the 14th Amendment regarding birthright?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the legal theory that Trump is proposing, and me and Zetsu actually disagree on this. I think the legal theory that Trump is proposing is wrong. I think there is an argument to be made, but I personally don't find it convincing. I think that the original intent of the 14th Amendment was to provide birthright to all people born on U.S. soil that are under the jurisdiction, and this would include the children born to illegal immigrants, in my opinion. So,
Okay, sure. So,
but
that, like
Trump
him
is
trying to do an EO to subvert that. What do you think
Trump
about
is
that?
well within his rights to create an EO to get, to, I guess, reject that as law. And then it gets blocked right away, which it has. And he hasn't tried to, go around that block or anything along those lines. He hasn't been stripping citizenship away.
He hasn't tried to get around that.
No, he has not. He has not tried to strip people of their citizenship if they were born in the U.S. He has not.
Can't do that.
Yeah, no, but he's literally
trying
to. He's literally trying to fight this so that he can get the 14th Amendment rewritten.
Well, he's
for
saying,
himself.
without
making
not directly violating a court order yet. Is what Lactoid is saying.
Oh, right. Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
In Nazi Germany yet, it's not a constitution.
He's challenging the idea of
That's how you challenge it.
It's how you challenge. That's literally how you challenge an amendment. The courts aren't allowed to just wake up one day and just decide, oh, this is constitutional. That's not. There needs to be a case put in front of them. And Trump has made an EO on birthright. It's going to go through the courts. It's not active until the Supreme Court rules on it, and that's assuming they rule in its favor. I don't think they will. My opinion is that the courts are going to rule against the Trump administration on this, probably pretty overwhelmingly, I would assume. But we'll see on that.
So do you not consider it a testing of in a bad way, of the constitutional checks and balances that he's trying to use an EO instead of going through Congress, which, by the way, he has control over, to make an amendment to overturn the 14th or rewrite the 14th, but just say, hey, I'm declaring the 14th is not valid anymore. This is not like a test on a constitutional power that worries you in any sort of way. It's like, well, a court might reject this, or I think the court's going to reject this, so it's totally fine.
Yeah, any EO is not challenging. EOs, by definition, can't be aren't like areas where there can be room for constitutional crises, because you could always go to court. That seems to be what you're suggesting.
Well, hold on, but it's blocked. Yeah, it's blocked. And then, so like, for example, when Biden ordered OSHA to mandate vaccines, that was blocked right away. I wouldn't call that a constitution. And by the way, the Supreme Court later ruled that he overstepped. Yeah, and hold on. The Supreme Court ordered that he said that he overstepped his authority when he did that. But because that was blocked, it doesn't mean it was a constitutional crisis. Wait. Student loan forgiveness.
So first of all, I think there's a couple distinctions here that matter. One is we're talking about a core provision of the Constitution relating to who's part of the club, the citizenship clause. And that is absolutely your right to be more worried about clauses that pertain to your citizenship.
Bodily autonomy?
Constitutional provisions that relate to your citizenship, your membership, whether you're allowed to vote, right? Because only citizens are allowed to vote. Those obviously raise higher threshold concerns than statutes of Congress. And by the way, the argument made by Biden in the OSHA case is a lot better and a lot stronger, in my opinion, given the capacious language of the statute that was being referenced.
Your opinion.
Compared to the completely bad faith argument that illegal immigrants are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
That's
insane.
Come on.
It's insane.
Yeah,
I don't agree with it.
You don't think it's bad faith to call all illegal
immigrants
invaders or of a foreign army? That's not bad faith.
I don't. Hold on.
By the way,
I don't think it's done in bad faith. I personally disagree with it. I think he will lose at the Supreme Court.
What would it look like if it was bad faith? I'm going to ask you this every time, Lactoid, because you're in this imaginary happy world where everyone's super, super nice to each other. But what do you think it would be if it was bad faith? What would it look like?
What would it look like?
What would a bad faith argument would he have to say I'm bad faith, or would he have to go against 140 years of Supreme Court precedent and use a lawyer who's made the same arguments to try to birtherism Kamala Harris to propose that the 14th Amendment is no longer valid for children of illegal immigrants? What would be bad faith then?
I don't know. When it comes to an executive,
that seems to be the answer for everything. You don't fucking know.
Hold up. When it comes to the executive, you guys are antsy tonight. When it comes to the executive, they can issue executive orders. This is well within their executive power. I'm assuming you guys don't want to get rid of that here. No. They're well within in ordering, hey, we're ordering this, and then because we are not in a constitutional crisis, the courts are going to block it right away, which they did, and then it's going to be heard by the Supreme Court.
Roberts is concerned.
We get an answer on this.
You agree? Roberts is concerned,
before we get he might be concerned. About what? It's still going to go to him.
Chief Justice Roberts comes out publicly with a public statement, which he's wont to do, and he says, I'm concerned. It's concerning to hear elected officials talking about ignoring court's orders. You think he's going to say that if he's not concerned?
Hold on. You're referencing back to the topic that I thought you guys wanted to move on from. We're talking specifically about the 14th Amendment issue. On the 14th Amendment,
ignoring a court order.
On the 14th Amendment, do you agree that there is no evidence right now that the Trump administration has ignored the court blocking the removal of birthright citizenship.
I do not have evidence as I sit here that Trump is
only ignore
violating
other court orders.
that court order currently. But that,
Great,
but
great,
you guys are talking about
great.
good and bad faith.
Wait,
No,
great,
you guys are
great,
talking
great.
about
That's all I
good and
wanted.
bad
That's all I wanted.
faith. Wait, Lactoid, you guys are talking about good
That's
and
all
bad
I wanted.
faith.
Oh, wait. That's all I wanted. All I wanted to know was that, okay, the court said no, and they're not doing it until the case that they're going to argue.
Lactoid, it's only
goes in
been
front of
2
the Supreme
weeks. We
Court.
can't know what's going to happen.
We can't. The Supreme Court.
So
the
you
Supreme
guys are
Court could
talking
review.
about good and
the
bad
Supreme
faith.
Court could review and say birthright's actually not a thing because illegal immigrants aren't subject to jurisdiction of blah blah blah.
Yeah, I also hate this
argument that they made.
This judicial supremacy you guys are saying, as though courts could not be themselves a source of a constitutional crisis. For example, Dred Scott. You guys agree that Dred Scott? Do you think that Dred Scott?
Roe versus Wade.
Wait. Do you think Dred Scott?
Obergefell.
Wait. Do you think Dred Scott represented a constitutional crisis? That decision?
Yes, I think that
Okay,
Dred. I think when a court, wait. I think every non-originalist is a threat to the Constitution. and if the non-originalists get big enough, then it becomes a crisis. I think Wickard versus Filburn was at that point when we start getting into that shit. Dred Scott, Wickard versus Filburn, Chaplinsky, that shit. Yes, that is a constitutional crisis.
Just to be
Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade was
a constitutional crisis
than anything Trump has done.
Really? Okay. So
the
position is that Roe v. Wade is more of a constitutional crisis. By the way, we lived with Roe v. Wade for what, 50 years? You can disagree with that position. You can say whatever.
Crisis for a long time.
But you're saying that is a bigger threat. Yeah, a crisis. You have a different definition for what crisis means.
Yeah.
That's different, and that's more of a crisis than, for example,
evidence of a crisis.
than, for example, the president, by my estimation, unlawfully and unconstitutionally impounding every single aspect of federal financial assistance, save for a few carved out programs.
We disagree on that.
Okay.
Is it because I'm guessing, do you disagree with substantive due process in general?
I agree. I disagree with a non-originalist Supreme Court pulling laws out of their ass that have no basis in history, which is what they did with Roe versus Wade, which is what they did with Chaplinsky, where they said you can't call a cop a fascist because if you do and you get your ass kicked, well, that's on you because them's fighting words, right? That was another one of a really nice one from FDR's fascist.
You think Chaplinsky is just dead letter? It's dead letter, and no one is being
technically good law.
It's dead letter, and you're calling that a crisis. You're saying it's still a crisis because you guys are living in this delusional, formalistic world outside of the actual tangible experience of everyday people, where intention matters, where the life of people matters.
At the time of its ruling, I think Chaplinsky arguably could be a constitutional crisis. Now, it seems like we're out of that because the courts have continually narrowed it to the point where I somewhat agree with you. I think that nobody's really taking it seriously, even though it actually is essentially good law. But Wickard versus Filburn, I mean, the first time that the Supreme Court said, well, you really can't do that was Obamacare. Literally for decades, the federal government could just do whatever they want and say, well, Commerce Clause. All of that is way closer to a constitutional crisis. I don't know if it exactly is, okay, but it's way closer to a constitutional crisis than anything Trump has done.
Yes, if you agree with it, it's not a constitutional crisis, and if you don't agree with it, it is a constitutional crisis. That seems
almost like we're on a panel giving our opinions.
No. What I mean to say is, as a
the
policy
difference is
matter,
that Pisco and I might argue that things that we don't agree with are constitutional crisis, and you will stonewall and suck Trump's dick for 3 hours because you have no morals, and you're going to pretend like we're being hyperbolic. We're so antsy, like they're not going to revoke citizenship or at least try to and test this over and over and over for the next 4 years, as if that's not a big
bad
deal.
faith. Wait. Lactoid. It's bad faith to say that illegal immigrants are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. That's bad faith there.
I disagree with it. I don't think it's bad faith. No.
Okay.
Well, and again, I ask you, what would be a bad faith then?
If I'm listening to somebody's argument and they're going through, and it seems to me very clear that they don't actually believe what they believe about the law.
Be specific. Give me an example. Not
well,
maybe if I didn't.
It's going to be on a case by case. Yeah, it's going to be a case by case.
Well, make up a case.
Yeah, if I find hidden information indicating that Trump actually doesn't believe this, and he doesn't believe there's I think this is the case, or it's the lawyers themselves, and that's questionable as well because lawyers have a duty to represent their client.
Well,
I think
how about when he was
at
saying
that point you could argue that it's potentially in bad faith. But again,
so if I find a secret diary of Trump that says actually I've been lying the whole time, that is the only thing that could be bad faith.
You're so mad.
That's what you just said, dude.
You're so mad and verbose for somebody at the beginning of this.
You're being a stonewalling moron right now, and you're like,
at the beginning of this,
someone is going against 150 years of Supreme Court precedent.
You don't know any expertise in this area.
If someone is going against 150
you don't have any expertise in this area. You make YouTube videos ranting about social issues.
You know what? They're much more entertaining than you are.
Oh,
boring.
yeah, my
and
legal
you're not even a
analysis
fucking
is so bad.
constitutional
Okay,
lawyer.
You don't know
right?
anything.
So
You're
if
all
it's-
you are
if
is
you're-
all
if
you
you're
are
arguing
is
is
talking head.
150 years, if 150
All
years
you are
is
is talking head.
precedent,
You're
then do
only
you want to
here
talk about what
because
I'm
you have
saying
a lot
right
of
now, or do
views
you want to
to
ad
say.
hom me? All right? Do you want to ad hom me?
Oh,
Okay,
you
150 years.
started it. You literally said I was sucking Trump's dick. You
Yeah.
called me
You
an
are.
idiot.
You
Literally
are. That's
started
started the
objective.
ad homs.
I have
oh,
a
Are
picture.
you glass cannon? You can
You're
throw it
glazing
insults all
Trump.
You can throw it
150
insults all day.
I can take
but
it.
the
So give it
moment
to me.
I give like a
I just
little
wanna
bit of
talk.
like
I just want to
flame
talk,
back.
buddy.
I give
I
a
just wanna
little bit
ask
of
you-
flame back.
Okay.
All of a sudden, like,
I'll
oh,
be
don't be
okay.
don't be mean to me.
Okay, we're done.
Bitch.
We had our laugh. It was fun. Yeah. So
Can I ask a good faith question? I really want it.
please,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Okay, so are you arguing that it is not bad faith to go against 150 years of Supreme Court precedents and say that illegal immigrants are foreign invaders? You think that is not bad faith? I just want you to say that, yes or no.
Well, does it have to be bad faith to be a conflict or a crisis or?
Wick, I asked Lactoid.
I just
Are you lactoid?
Yeah, I said no.
Okay,
And by the way,
why not?
you have to agree with this, okay?
I have
Because there have been Supreme Court decisions that have rescinded
Oh, he got you there.
long-standing precedent.
Oh, he got
that
you there.
I'm certain you would agree with. So like
He got
Brown
you there,
versus Board of
Soy.
Education. Brown versus Board of
that's true.
Education.
So
that
you got
overturned
there.
how
I'm not
many
gonna
fucking
lie.
years of precedent? Do you
A
think
lot.
Brown,
This is
Brown
different,
versus
bro.
Board of
This
Education?
is fucking different.
Whoa,
There's
whoa, 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 whoa.
Just
Pisco,
Trump
don't
150
save
years
him,
part.
Pisco. He's a legal
wait.
expert all of a sudden. Don't save him.
I'm
He
not a
knows
legal
what's
expert.
going on. Go ahead.
actually-
Wait.
So
You
first of all,
felt confident enough to ask me
agree.
this fucking question.
I agree. Wait,
No, I'm trying to save him. I'm gonna save him.
I'm going to get my
I can
question
answer
out.
for you. I
I'm
can
going to
answer
get my
your
question. No,
because you're asking,
again,
is it
for the
only overturning precedent that
for the
somehow
benefit
makes
of
it
the
bad faith?
audience, for the
No,
benefit of the
obviously that's
audience,
not what I'm
for the
fucking
benefit
saying.
of the
That is
audience,
part of it, but I'm
for
also
the benefit
talking
of the
about
audience,
fact
I'm going to
that all
finish
of
my
these
question.
cases
Yeah,
have been
finish it,
ruled on
finish
by
it.
the
Let him
court.
finish, let him finish.
Stop. For the
Thank you so
benefit
much,
of the
Palms. I love
audience,
you.
I'm
I
going
love
to
you,
finish my
Palms,
question, no matter how much you try
Thank
to
you for the
steamroll
subs.
this, okay?
You're the best. You're the
You
best. You're the
said,
best.
oh, like you're pointing to the precedent. Oh, you think that trying to overturn this amount of precedent, you can really do that in good faith, as you say very smugly, when there's plenty of Supreme Court cases that overturn precedent
Right, and
that you
let
would
me
agree with. So let me ask you.
Let him-
Okay,
What?
and
I'm
then
not
I
done
would
with my
go on
question
to
yet.
Let
I've
him
got-
finish the question.
I'm not
We're
done with
gonna
my
finish.
question yet.
Fucking say it.
Finish the question. Lactoid,
Yeah,
finish the question.
you might know
Lactoid, finish
where
the
I'm
question.
going. They might not. Okay, you're not the center of the universe. It's other people. Okay, I don't know how to explain that to you.
Just finish your
So,
question, Lactoid.
Brown
please.
versus Board of Education overturned a shit ton of precedent when it comes to the segregation of American society. Do you think Brown versus Board of Education, the argument in favor of that, was in bad faith?
Keep on. Okay, you're done? Okay. Do you think that I think only is bad faith if you're overturning precedent? Is that what you think I think?
That's what you said.
Do you think
Let
I
him
think that?
clarify. Let him clarify. He did say it. You did say it, but you can
I-
clarify.
I-
I don't think that is the. I don't think that is the only thing.
That was the argument.
Just like
I'll
you-
admit it.
just like
I'll
you
admit it.
clarified
I'm a little
indefinite.
bit punched.
blown out.
You
It's a
clarified
little bit
indefinite
punctuated.
lactoid.
It's the precedent being that the precedent being in this case, not just if you go against precedent, somehow this is bad faith. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. Unless you really think I'm saying
Why
that.
are you
I promise
specifying
I'm
the
not.
years then?
Well,
Be
just-
clear. Hold on.
just-
Soy pill. Be clear what
I'm
you
trying
mean by bad faith. Go ahead.
Bad faith in the sense that for 150 years we have declared that illegal immigrants are not a foreign army. That is what I'm saying. If you're going against 150 years of that, or hey, let's say we decided that yesterday. It doesn't matter. Obviously, do you think that you can somehow declare a bunch of illegal immigrants as a foreign army in good faith, regardless of how long that's been precedent?
Yes.
How?
A foreign army? No. I think there is an
Foreign
argument.
invader.
they're invaders.
I think there isn't. I think they're legally speaking probably not an army. Okay, but I think you could. I think you could say you can make a good faith argument that
please
the 14th Amendment
make it.
was never. Yeah, the 14th. I'm in the middle of it. The 14th Amendment was never intended to apply to illegal immigrants due to the idea of they're not under the jurisdiction of the United States, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's an argument there to be had. I disagree with it. Like obviously,
Just like you disagree with Brown v.
disagree?
Board, right? You disagree with Brown v. Board. Is that right?
I disagree with some of the implications of Brown versus Board. Yes,
And you're going after
some
him.
of it's good.
And you're using this
some
is
of it's
bad faith,
good.
right? Because you're using Brown
Well, no,
versus
it's not bad faith because I'm not the one married to years of precedent.
True.
Like
Hey,
he claimed,
Can I give my opinion?
take that back, Pisco. Hey, wait. Take that back.
go ahead.
I'm right. I'm
That
not
was a
married
joke.
to years
That
of
was a
precedent.
joke.
You know
Yes,
that.
yes, that was a
Okay,
joke.
thank you.
That was a
Go
joke.
ahead.
But I want to be clear. I actually do think it's relevant, the amount of years of precedent. It's not dispositive, but if there's a great deal of precedent here, we have cases going back to the Chinese exclusion laws and cases as early I think in the 1990s,
yeah, in the 1800s.
1990s. Which say essentially this: there ought to be a really good argument, right? There ought to be a really good constitutional argument for you to be advocating to overturn it. There was a really good, in my opinion, not your opinion, constitutional argument to overturn Plessy v. Ferguson and Brown v. Board. I don't think that you can find that here, and I think that the length of precedent here is a factor to consider the good or bad faith. And I think that's totally fair. He's not a legal expert, and I don't think you should hammer him on that. It's not dispositive, but I do think it's relevant, and I'm glad that he brought it up.
Wait. I will hammer it. I will hammer. Let me respond. I will hammer him with it when he comes at me with ad homs, acting all confident.
Okay, that's fair.
And then when I clarify,
okay, that's fair.
What's your good faith? What's your good faith interpretation of saying that illegals are in border foreign invaders?
Can I just because this is
I can play in the mud too.
You've never left the mud,
because this is going to be bothering me because I think this is tangential to the reason, like whether or not we are in a constitutional crisis or Trump is attempting to subvert the Constitution and the levers of power and things like that. He can be doing it in entirely good faith, and it could still be trying to dismantle.
That's a good point. I think there's some things that people could be doing in good faith that could still represent a constitutional crisis, but I think that bad faith adds to the scope of what we can look at in the current time at time equals 1, right? Because what Lactoid is saying might sound reasonable at first blush to someone. Well, it's only been 8 days. It's just a pause. There've been other pauses in history, right? But what we're trying to do is tell you that it's a crisis right now. And in order to get into the crisis right now moment, we got to give you evidence of what they're planning in the future and whether or not they're coming at this in good or bad faith. And so while I agree, there are some constitutional crises that could have been reached in good faith by the respective branches of government. Not all. Some crises need to be proved both with current actions and with purpose and intent. And so I don't think it's irrelevant.
And Wick, I need to add on to this. This is also very important that, like, when we talk about Project 25 and it's like, oh, you're just being antsy, you're just fear mongering, hyperbole, when as if this wasn't the plan from the beginning that they're all saying that they're following, that is clearly like 70% of it's already been checked off. And specifically in this good faith discussion as to whether or not the 14th Amendment can be overturned or not applied to illegal immigrants, they literally have two contradicting bad faith arguments. One being that foreign invaders are illegal immigrants are foreign invaders, and the other being that it just doesn't apply to illegal citizens, which are not in the same thing. So they have to have these two contradictory things to try to push this, because it's not about whether or not I think they're foreign invaders. It's about I want to get rid of illegal birthright citizenship. That's all it is. And so that is the bad faith. It's all of the precedent before this. It's all of the plans. It's all of hey, I've been telling you what I've been doing and what I want to do for 40 years, and now I'm finally doing it. But actually, it's only been 3 days, and they haven't finished doing it, so we actually don't know if it's
and they want to blind us, and they want to say you can't look at that. You have to just consider the formalism of the argument itself, as opposed to the argument being bad, as you are acknowledging, in addition to the additional context given by Project 2025, contemporaneous statements made by Trump. I mean, Trump literally said we'll probably need to have an amendment for it. If that's not a admission that the argument is weak, what is? I mean, he's literally saying the argument is weak enough that we might need to go to the states to have a constitutional amendment. I think that's pretty indicative of bad faith.
No, wait, let me respond to this. You can make arguments like you can make arguments for something that you believe is the law and recognize at the same time that those arguments are weak and that you probably won't win. I mean, you and I both know that, right? You can bring arguments to the court.
Is that an indication of bad faith, knowing your argument's not good and you just want to push your agenda?
No, not at all. In court, you can bring arguments that, like, especially if it's your only argument, that is particularly weak, and you have to put it forward to the court.
But we're analyzing this not as attorneys. We're analyzing this as political actors.
No, we're analyzing this as attorneys, okay?
No, I'm not.
With the law, whether or not you're bringing this in good faith, okay? You absolutely, when you're bringing a legal challenge in good faith, this I think well fits within that standard. And also, one thing that I think we've lost a little bit here, and Zetsui said at the very beginning, and this is like a commonly understood part of the definition of constitutional crisis in political science, at least, which is that a constitutional crisis requires that there be like some kind of inability to solve the problem within legal mechanisms. And in this case, when you have a judge immediately block it, no evidence of circumvention of the block, and this going up to the Supreme Court, you can't possibly call this a constitutional crisis.
No, wait a second. No,
the solution, like the solvement or whatever, is right there at the Supreme Court where it's going to go. Like, if this was a constitutional, like, how is this a crisis if we know where it's going next and it's going to the body that is tasked with interpreting the law?
Yeah, no, it is a crisis because the executive branch, first of all, even the attempt by itself and the fact that they're able to marshal a great deal of support within the Congress and among their followers shows that they're trying to do something that would generate a crisis. And they're actively attempting to evade judicial review. And I didn't hear you, Lactoid. I quoted that judge where the judge said, it's clear that you were trying to evade judicial review. Do you accept that? Do you accept that the memo rescission was in bad faith trying to evade judicial review?
No, I don't accept that the memo rescission was in bad faith to attempt to avoid judicial review. I've seen no evidence that the Trump campaign has been doing this. If they were doing
you haven't
this,
read their diary, so how would you know?
Surely they would be doing this about the 14th Amendment.
Bro, if Biden did this shit, if Biden did this kind of, evasion,
Biden did this shit. Look at OSHA, the student loan forgiveness. He tried to get it on the Supreme Court how many times?
Wait, no.
On day one, he did this.
Wait. Explain the comparison here where what we're talking about is, just to be clear, the audience is aware, the rescission of this memo. They say, we're rescinding just the memo, not the policy. And you guys are saying there's something other than judicial review that could be motivating what he's doing.
Other than, no, I would say that the reason why is because the entire thing was retarded and creates chaos. It doesn't actually give any proper information for anyone.
Trump realized he was retarded right now.
Okay, I think hold on.
No, that the policy is vague and creates confusion, and that's why things are getting frozen.
Not the memo.
Right, housekeeping for a moment, because I think my Discord's freezing up. I'm not sure.
Sure.
Can you guys hear me? Is this on
I
my
hear
end,
you.
or is this on?
You look great.
You're not frozen.
I'm clear.
The only thing not frozen is Discord right now.
Your stream is freezing a bit, Wick. You're clear on our end though, so it's probably
Discord's good. Yeah, maybe OBS.
Discord is fine.
I do have to take a small break to make a little money here, if you
let's
mind.
do it.
I gotta monetize the crisis.
Let's do it.
So let me read some of these super chats.
Wait, Trump's blocking it right now. Actually, he's blocking the super chats. You can't.
He's been frozen.
No more super chats, Wick. We're done.
It's only been 1 minute. It's only been 1 minute.
Yeah, Wolfglen's given me 5 gift subs on Twitch. Thank you for that. I really appreciate you. $5 from Dej Nuts to say, how much will it cost to change the debate topic to is Pisco a hypocrite? More than $5. Thank you for the $5. $2 from Dej Nuts. Doge isn't freezing anything. Fair.
That's
okay.
not true.
$2.
What are you talking about?
1524. Yeah.
Like maybe trying to say the president is actually freezing it. That's true.
And he's consulting them to do it, and he's just saying yes to it. That's
a good point. Wait, that's a good point.
No, it's not a good point.
That too quickly.
No, if you're just going to do, if you're going to say, well, everything is a function of the president's authority, and so nothing Doge does is anything. I mean, that's not true. Let's think about this like real.
You know what you mean when.
Yeah, he's agreeing with you.
Okay,
I'm agreeing with you.
I'm talking to the chatter, not you. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sure. Okay, $2 from TL1524. Can Destiny's Little Hobbit contain itself? Yes or no?
I'm not I'm 6 foot. I don't know where this.
I'm 6 foot.
But you are Destiny's. Is that what
I'm
the
6
foot?
foot 2.
You got to deny both of those things.
Well,
you got to deny both of those.
I split ties with Steven, but they'll continue on, and that's fine. That's their right to do that, and it can tell when the arguments are weak. That's where they go, and so I'm fine with it.
And I was making it clear.
And as a 3'10" person, I don't.
I know you didn't.
Telling the truth about his height.
I don't. In fact, I don't even think you should get shit because that was a brave.
Appreciate it.
Oh, okay. Well, we can kiss later. Fair enough. $2 from TL1524. Yeah, louder Pisco doesn't make you any smarter. Thank you for $2.
That's why you combined it with the right argument. Louder
that's right. That's
double
right.
better.
$2 more from Dej Nuts to say, my 8-month-old son laughs whenever Pisco speaks.
Oh, that's cute.
Babies love me. What can I say?
Yeah.
Wait, why are you letting your child listen to? Okay,
listen to me.
Plus.
He's gonna be a lawyer. Don't worry, Quick.
$5 from Audacity. Pisco is being disingenuous, pretending like he doesn't know how challenges are raised and met by the court.
When did I do that? I acknowledge that there's court litigation going on right now. But that's not just because there's litigation. There's always going to be litigation on everything.
I understand. I think it's because they're saying, well, because of the argument is if there is a challenge at all, therefore it is not a constitutional crisis because there's some challenge. And therefore, if you think there's a crisis and also a challenge, you're somehow holding to contradictory opinions, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, whenever there's something bad, people are going to run to the courts. Just saying that there's a court challenge is literally brainless. And you're essentially saying no event can be a constitutional crisis because you could conceivably go to the court about it. I guess you could have, in the Civil War, you could have gone to the court to make it so that the secession is illegal. In fact, there have been arguments about nullification, that kind of stuff in the Supreme Court. So I guess it's not a crisis.
I don't think what he's saying. Wait, can you reread that? What he said?
Pisco doesn't know about judicial process.
Is
how you bring challenges?
pretending like he doesn't know how challenges are raised and met by the court.
Yeah, well, I think he's referring more to saying like the way that you challenge it. So if you wanted to challenge the 14th Amendment, the court, Trump would say, I think these two groups are outside of chat. So he's not saying like I'm defying and I want you to overrule it. He's saying I think ours are different. And the thing is, by passing that law, you're creating a challenge. That's how you would go. Now the court goes, no, it does. You're trying to distinguish.
But it's not dispositive. So that's it. If I were the president, I went to court and I was like, it's my position that Dred Scott is still good law and black people are not citizens and cannot be citizens. Do you think that if I did that, this is an extreme example. No, I know it's an extreme example.
Yeah.
You would say that this is bad faith, anti-constitutional, and it's a crisis to the extent that we are fearful of what it portends for the future. And I think that that's completely true. Or at least, at the very least, if it's not a crisis because you trust the courts, you could say it's bad faith.
I don't think he would say that, right? If the court,
I don't know if I go that hyperbolic, but
no.
Yeah,
would it be bad faith? Would you agree it's bad faith at the very minimum?
To go, yes. Because,
okay.
No, because, well, that's not even bad faith.
Since he was elected, right? Like Nick
You're
Fuentes
saying that I'm just going to...
Christ. So is it your position that it would not be bad faith to say that Dred Scott is still good law, to go to the court and raise that? Oh my God! All right, we can move on.
Wait. Let me respond. Okay, you can't just let that hang, please.
You let it hang.
No, I didn't. I was.
You did let it hang.
I was going to answer.
You had to think about it a little too long.
Well, answer because I got more.
I'm trying.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay, you're all good, brother. You're all good. So I guess it depends. Like if we're talking about good faith from the actor themselves, like if Nick Fuentes was elected president, does he actually believe this? Could he like credibly bring this if someone's like delusional enough? Yeah, you could have like a good faith there. I think any lawyer trying to bring the argument that black people aren't people, like I would be 99.999% sure that they're acting in bad faith or they have some kind of psychosis, right? There could be.
Wait, what do you mean? If Nick Fuentes believes it and he gets a law degree and then introduces it, now it's good faith, right? So it's okay.
Well, no. If he gets a law degree, then he would know. Then by going through law school, he would know that's like not a good legal.
You think that we can de-radicalize Nick Fuentes by putting him through law school?
No. Wait. I'm not saying that we can de-radicalize Nick Fuentes by putting him through law school. What I'm saying
you just said if he went through law school, he would now not think that black.
He's saying it would be good faith because he would be aware of the precedent.
Yes, thank you.
No, but Fuentes is aware of the precedent right now.
I don't know if he is. I don't
You think he doesn't know about the history of the Civil
War? I don't know Nick Fuentes' legal background. Okay, I don't.
He threatened to firebomb my house or pipe bomb my house once.
That's
yeah. He said he was going to pipe bomb my house. So it was
that's
fun.
horribly fucked up. Wait. Can I please? So I don't know the legal background of Nick Fuentes. What I'm saying is that if you go through law school, if you have any kind of knowledge on like the legal history of the United States, I don't think you can, in good faith, make the argument that like black people aren't people. Okay, now.
Aren't citizens.
You can make the good faith argument that illegal immigrants are.
The 14th Amendment doesn't apply. Yes, you can make that good faith argument. I think so.
You do a distinction.
And by the way, even if somebody makes a bad faith argument about like black people not being people, if the Supreme Court orders like the courts order a hold on it and then review it and then decide against it, no constitutional crisis has happened because the Supreme Court functioned exactly as it should.
The president is trying to subvert the Constitution and take away citizenship from black people just because someone stopped him. It's not a crisis. That's just the standard.
The part of the definition of the crisis is that there's no way of solving it, and the Supreme Court, quite literally, their ability is to solve it. Now, if there's not enough time for the Supreme Court to solve it, let's say a situation like the Civil War, I don't know, where they probably I don't know if they directly defied a Supreme Court order there, but there certainly wasn't enough time to have the Supreme Court rule on that. But if like they all started like grabbing guns and like right away, then yeah, you can say that like that's a constitutional crisis because the court hasn't had enough time. But if the court freezes the order so there is enough time for the Supreme Court to hear it, then no, there's no crisis because there is a specific constitutional process for dealing with disagreements, and that's what's happening.
We got super chats.
Yeah, we got a lot of super chats to go, and we can't let's save the big arguments for the $50 super chats, and let's keep the $5 super chats to maybe a comment.
Sorry about that, Wick.
What if it's a bad $50 super chat?
$5 from Audacity. Ask Pisco if he believes in presidential veto power.
Yes, I do.
Whoa.
There. That's all it needed, right? We don't need more. Okay, $5 from Audacity. Pisco, again, being disingenuous. If Congress disagrees, they have to provide sufficient reasoning and vote, again, on releasing funds.
No. See, that's the change in operation.
Even under impoundment, they don't.
$5 from Audacity. If they fail to provide sufficient reasoning and the president holds it again, the challenge would be brought to
That's
court.
not right.
No.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it works. But thanks for the $5, Audacity. I have approved release of all your funds to my bank account. Okay, $2 from non-fun. Worse than being bad faith, Lactoid is Canadian. True.
What?
Not Canadian. It's a lie.
No way, right?
It's a weird
from faith?
ongoing meme.
Wait,
I'm not.
can we do a lactoid birtherism? Wait, why do they think you're Canadian?
Because I'm believe it or not, I'm actually very nice on panels. Unless people throw shit at me first.
Say about
You threw the first stone at me going personally.
No.
Yeah,
your
100%.
in your intro, you were talking shit.
I'm saying these guys are going to defend it.
That's why.
I don't think he did.
We can go back. I remember changing my intro because of your intro. So
I throw the first stone against Lactoid. I'll take that. I'll take that L. But Lactoid.
$5.
Wait. Lactoid needs to say the word about. Say about.
About.
Okay. I don't think he's Canadian, guys.
He tried.
Oh. Look, $5 from Fates to the Shadow Realm with all of them. I was tempted. $2 from Solomon Argus. Conservatives equals good. Progressives equal bad.
Whoa.
Thank you for the $2.
Great.
$2 from Old School. Your panelists are trying to give you an aneurysm. True.
True.
$5 from Ben Riley. If you really want to know how Lactoid feels about precedent, ask him about if he thinks the Civil Rights Act was a good idea.
I think
That's
Article
not
2
about
is
precedent.
unconstitutional. Yeah.
You think it's unconstitutional?
I think it violates freedom of the specifically the one mandating private association. I think that violates the First Amendment's freedom of association.
So Title VII is a constitutional crisis. Yes,
it's unconstitutional. Is there a way to solve it?
So it's a constitutional crisis.
I don't know. It could be. Yeah, it could be an
There's a
ongoing
way to
constitutional
solve
crisis.
it, and it doesn't get solved.
So Title VII,
Title
for you guys know, is like employment discrimination law. Lactoid says that that's more of a constitutional crisis than, the president trying to usurp legislative authority.
Or Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
There are exceptions from personal. Never. All right, it's not working.
First Amendment matters, Pisco. Okay, freedom of association matters.
I know, but
$2 from another new account. If Biden did this, quote unquote, he did. Thank you for the $2.
When you guys have not provided OSHA stuff is totally inapposite.
He tried to talk about the deferment at the beginning, right? About the wall, isn't that right?
The deferment of the wall
yeah,
funds.
So he, no, it's not. Do you want to keep doing super chats? We can do it after. Or do you...
No, wait. Let's address.
You mean the deferment of the funds that were initially reappropriated from the Defense Department?
So Congress allocated them. The reason why he even deferred them was to say that there was a bunch of surveys and stuff that were waived. That he goes, you know what? I'm not going to waive them. I want to do them. And then on top of that, he said he wanted to do consulting things. And so the question is, I still think that within his rights,
if he's allowed to waive.
But I do think it's obvious that he was doing it just to delay the wall. The idea goes on day one, he just had a thought that occurred to him. But again, I think it's within his power. Like he made the argument, and I think that it'd be hard to challenge it in court. So
do you know how many days he deferred it? Do you know how many days he deferred it?
I have no idea. I think it went for a while, but I didn't.
No, but if he has a substantive ability to waive permits and stuff like that Congress envisioned for,
Congress already did it.
Yeah, that's completely different.
No. Congress waived them already. He unwaived them.
Well, then I don't.
He said, I want to unwaive all of them to do all the surveys.
I'll have to look at the. I'll have to look at the facts. I'll have to look at the facts of that alleged deferment. But just to be clear, it's not enough, in my opinion, for something to be an unconstitutional, illegal deferment for it to be a constitutional crisis. What we talked about at the beginning, it has to be existential, affecting the structure of the Constitution. And so you can point to other deferments, maybe that are even illegal. Maybe I'll even agree with you, but I'm not going to say that just because there is one, that it's a constitutional crisis.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. So let me just kind of ask one question, on that specific point. If the president has the ability to do something, but there's also a requirement, hey, I got to let you know exactly what I'm doing, and he does the thing that he otherwise could do, but let's say he just skips the part where he lets him know what he's doing. Would you say that rises to the level of a constitutional crisis?
If he's allowed to do what he's going to do and he just fails to follow through with notice, depending on his state of mind, I would say if I think good faith in him, then I would say, and generally not trying to centralize authority, I'd be like, no, it's not a constitutional crisis. But here, the violations of notice provisions, the violations of time dates, those are all deliberate. He's trying to say that any intrusion by the legislative branch into executive affairs is de facto unconstitutional. And so he's violating them, just like the IGs, when he fired all the IGs, just like when he fired the NLRB nominees or sorry, members when he fired people on the EEOC commission. So, and they're not going through with the notice and substantive requirement checks and all those kinds of notices to Congress provisions. It's not done just because they forgot. It's done because there's a substantive challenge to Congress's authority to put any limit on what the president is allowed to do. That's what is happening.
See, and the reason I disagree with that is I think that it would be so easy for them just to do that if they even if they intended on this whole project, because this is getting challenged by legal groups anyway, right? This is going to go to the Supreme Court, even if we roll with the assumption that this is to challenge whether or not the president has the unilateral right to impound funds, regardless of the Impoundment Act of the 70s. Then he could be doing that regardless, right? The idea that, he could do this power, he could do it, he just needs to let Congress know, hey, I'm doing it.
No, wait.
And the idea
that was an assumption of your question.
That
was an assumption of your question. I do not accept that the kind of broad scale pause here is necessarily in line with the Impoundment Act. And I think you can think about that in the same kind of major questions doctrine that was applied to the student loan things that Biden did. What they said was, yeah, you can do this kind of targeted relief. They didn't actually say that, but that's been approved over time, these kinds of targeted relief. But they're saying if Congress wanted broad sweeping power to be handed to the president to forgive student loans in this broad way that affects everything, they would have more clearly stated. And so
I'm not saying that you said this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you said this. I'm putting forward my position, which my position is, I think that a president who does something and they could do it, but the only thing that they missed out on doing was telling Congress, hey, I'm going to do this. But they otherwise could do it perfectly fine. I don't think this rises to the constitutional crisis.
I do have.
He has so many super chats.
Not super chats, but I do want to keep everyone's time in mind. I want to respect your time, and I have one more question before we get to closings and things that I do want to discuss. And this is to Lactoid and Zetsway's side first. Regardless or not, whether you think that this is currently a crisis, right, that we are currently in it, do you not think that it is reasonable for citizens who are watching this go down, watching some of this, some would call unprecedented behavior by people like Elon Musk, by people like President Trump, and have concerns that we are entering into one in the future? Like you mentioned that at the beginning, Lactoid specifically, you mentioned that Pisco was being hyperbolic and alarmist in his language. Do you not think that some of these different executive orders, firings, challenges, memos, freezings are at least not cause for some alarm?
Hold on. This was specifically to Pisco because of his intro. If you have somebody come in and say, yeah, I mean, overall, it's there's some concerns I have. Here's where he's right. Here's where I think he might be making mistakes. I'm interested to see how this develops. If that was the position coming in, obviously, I think this position is reasonable. I think this position is reasonable for any kind of president or politician trying to enact shit.
Are you concerned?
Because whenever this shit's going through, am I concerned personally? I mean, I think the question was, is somebody reasonable to be
I guess that's true, but I'm asking that.
Yeah.
Are you concerned?
No, the question, do you not have concerns?
Do I not have concerns? I mean, I think that what they're trying to do, first of all, I agree with what they're trying to do, just to be clear, because government is bloated. Government is a problem. So in that sense, I'm not concerned. I'm not really concerned as to, I guess, the peripherals of what's going on in terms of the any kind of threat to the Supreme Court or the separation of powers, because I think that historically, at least within my lifetime, the Supreme Court, or the Republican Party, and specifically Donald Trump, has selected justices and that have a functioning theory of law, that there's a respect for the Supreme Court, there's a respect for the balance of powers that exists within our government. So I'm not concerned that this is going to turn into some kind of major crisis. I can't rule it out.
Do you have any concerns?
There's always the potential for. Is there any? I always have some concerns whenever the government does anything. But beyond, but I'm assuming. But I know you're not going to like that answer. So that's why I'm assuming you're asking. Do I have concerns beyond
the alleged allegations of authoritarian overreach and centralization of authority, are those at all concerning to you?
No, I don't, because Doge has a specified expiration date What they're trying to do is specifically reduce the size of government, to reduce waste. They're posting the evidence. They're posting what they're doing. There's oversight by Congress. There's oversight by the president. They are, in my mind, like the intention to me seems very clear that they're attempting to shrink the bloat and waste that exists within the United States government. So no, I don't have that many concerns. Now, is there always in the back of my mind, well, maybe this is like a ploy? This is always the case. Okay. But beyond that, no, I have more faith in Donald Trump than Biden. Okay. And I have more faith in Biden and Donald Trump than George W. Bush. Like, no doubt.
Oh my God. Oh, yeah. Oh, we can go to closing.
Yeah.
Okay, I was an answer, but
Oh, sorry,
no,
Tetsu. I'm so sorry.
I was like, yeah, no. So
Wow.
it's okay. No, I think if you're a Democrat, I think there should be massive concerns right now in terms of execution. That's saying that I think the freeze is like, I agree with the judge where it goes, there's no rational basis for why you had to freeze. Everything you're suggesting you want to do, freeze has nothing to do with that. And so, especially if you're a Democrat and you don't trust Trump, which I assume you don't, then you should, and I actually don't mind the hyperbolic language either. I think what Democrats need to do is be like, you need to basically call out everything and kind of make it fiery enough, because you need, the only way you win is by galvanizing your base. And so if you're just like, you know what, I have some concerns with how he's doing it, I really don't like it, even like that's not going to get anyone to go out to vote. So in terms of execution, I think that Democrats in particular should be very concerned, because I suspect even if they go, oh, we're cutting policies that are inefficient, my guess is you're not going to like those things that he's cutting, or you're going to disagree with even the effect of it. It's like saying there might be a good policy, but if you try and have a 5-year-old implement it, it's not going to work. And so, but in terms of the idea of saying, do we want to review reportings of different agencies and all those things? I think those things are good to do, and I'd be interested to read them. But again, if you don't trust anyone currently in government, you're not going to like their review. So like in that sense, you should be very concerned.
Okay. With that, it has been a very robust discussion, very fiery discussion. I've enjoyed it. Gang, if you've enjoyed the show, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're following me on YouTube, if you're on Twitch or you're on Kick, hit the follow button. Really helps. Feel free to send me super chats, subs, all that. But I want to give each of these individuals a chance to have some closing thoughts and tell people where they can be found. So if you've liked what they said or doesn't like what they say, you can follow them at their various respective things. I have links to their socials in the YouTube description, so check that out. But we're just going to go in kind of the reverse order we did last time, and we'll give Pisco the last word. Lactoid, start us off, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, some of you may know, before this election, I hesitantly endorsed Donald Trump. And this was because of my analysis of his history, and kind of what was at stake at the 2024 election. Right before his inauguration, there was a couple things that made me super concerned. I really didn't like the Trump coin. I thought that was really shitty. And there's a couple other things that he did really upsetting. But since he's come into office, I think that he's been, in some ways, not good, right? And I've already called those out. The Gaza idea is bad, to put it mildly. It's a very bad idea. God, I hope that's just some weird negotiating tactic, because Jesus Christ, okay? But then on the other hand, there's been a lot of things that they've been doing that I am incredibly satisfied with. And he's doing more that I'm satisfied with than I anticipated. We got great cabinet picks coming through. I'm looking forward to what comes next. I think here, sure, we'll wait and see. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe after 90 days, Trump is going to look in the camera and say, "I am your God now." If that happens, if that happens, I will go to you, Pisco. I will apologize for my ignorance and my lack of foresight. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a bunch of cuts, you're going to see some kind of compromise, and then you're going to see back to business as usual, but just a little bit better. If you like what I had to say today, you can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. One last thing. I know things got heated. Yeah, I don't hold anything against you guys. No grudges. I'm not a big grudge guy. You guys might hold grudges against me. I don't know, but I'm not holding grudges against you guys. So everything is refreshed. Going forward, I won't be mean unless you guys are mean to me again. So go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for being here. Check them out, gang. Soy Pill. Go switch it out.
Yeah. I didn't get to talk as much, and like we all pointed out, I'm not as experienced, and that's fine. I did shout, but you know what? It's all in good fun. No hard feelings. I agree. What's happening right now? Power is being consolidated in the executive branch, and this is very much planned out and explicitly stated by the people in power right now. JD Vance has said, we want to defy court orders. You can look in Project 2025 and the people that they are appointing who are architects of Project 2025 and putting into power, and what they say things like the president should, quote, this is from Project 25, page 28, the president should choose a White House counsel who is well versed in the Constitution, administrative and regulatory law, and the inner workings of Congress and the political process. Instead of choosing a specialist, the president should hire a counsel with extensive experience with a wide range of complex legal subjects. But moreover, while a candidate with elite credentials might seem ideal, the best one will be above all loyal to the president. And then at the end of that sentence, and the Constitution. And there's a reason they put loyal to the president first. It's because they don't give a shit about the Constitution. They care about Trump being able to enact his agenda and putting those people in power. Lactoid thinks that Roe v. Wade and the civil rights are more likely a crisis. I think that speaks for itself, and you can all make your decisions based on that. He thinks that the word waste and fraud are these magical words where as soon as you say them, suddenly it's okay to cut whatever the you want. It's not deleting anymore because the whole department is a waste. And I guess if we're in some crazy world where, like, if a robber breaks into your house, waves his gun around, and threatens to murder you, as long as he hasn't riddled you with 29 9mm bullets, it's not a crisis because maybe the police are going to come in and stop you. So that exists. So maybe it's not a crisis now. I think that the bad faith is not somehow contingent on the fact that only if Trump wrote it in his little secret note diary that somehow we can know his true intention that it's bad faith. I think you can look at the arguments being made. They're contradictory. They go against precedent. They are ridiculous. They are bad faith. I'm someone who's not an alarmist. I don't think that the first administration was as bad as a lot of the resist libs were saying. I did not have the Donald syndrome or TDS as many of the people around me in the Bay Area did. And you know what? It turns out they were all right. They just needed a second try. I think what's happening now is insane. If you look at what's happening in the past 2 weeks, it is insane. And don't listen to me. Don't listen to Lactoid. Don't listen to anyone on this panel. Listen to the judges, the representatives, and the people that are raising the alarms and saying, this is unprecedented. This is scary. This is consolidating power in a completely unjust, insane way that we've never seen before. And this might not come back where he can give this power back. So please, for the love of God, be scared right now. It is not good.
Okay. Thank you for being here. You can find his channel in the YouTube description. Click on that link and you can see what he has to say. Setsway.
Yeah, I guess start off with I probably should apologize that I didn't I genuinely wasn't mentioning some of those cases. I had assumed I probably should have posted them in the group chat that I was even looking at them. I wasn't, and I realized especially after Pisco, it kind of snapped at me. It was like, you can't just accept my interpretation of it. If you haven't read it, you have there's no reason for you to accept that. So and same thing with the bills, that if I'm trying to provide them to you, but if I can't just ask you to accept if you're not certain. And so that was kind of rude of me. But overall, I'd say that a lot of these things that people are saying consolidating power or that are unprecedented, we do have a lot of legislative history on a lot of things. A lot of things have gone severely wrong in this country that don't really constitute constitutional crises. And I don't think this one's necessarily any worse than other situations we've been in, or ones that we wouldn't consider that. Like I said, say Nixon's was far more severe than this. But overall, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be losing your shit. Especially if you're a Democrat, you should not be letting up on Trump at all. That especially good in terms of the things that are insane. I'd be saying the things like the Greenland, the Panama Canal, the tariffs. These things they're not constitutional crises, but those things, I'm like, how are you not? I'm like, that's scaring the shit out of me. And it's like, but then when it comes down to this, I'm reading the bills and I'm reading how grants are given and how they're rescinded. I'm going, okay, procedurally, it doesn't appear like this is a big issue. And that's kind of where I was coming from. So it doesn't mean that I don't think that I'm not trying to get anyone to tone the heat down. It's more of just saying, I feel like there's sharper knives to wield, and I feel like you guys are wielding dull ones. I'd rather you pull out the sharper ones, I guess. But yeah, I don't have a channel or anything. I'm not a content creator, so.
Wick exclusive. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate you. Yeah, thanks. And last but certainly not least, Pisco.
Yeah, that dude really kind of threw me at the end there. I had a whole thing sort of stewing in my head, and he said that the Watergate situation and the Saturday Night Massacre and what happened with Nixon is way worse of a constitutional crisis. I don't even know, based on the immunity decision of the Supreme Court, how Nixon isn't completely vindicated and everything he did was completely correct and not a problem at all. He was being accused of obstructing justice by firing a bunch of prosecutors, which apparently he has the complete authority to do, regardless of whether his intent is to obstruct a particular particular criminal investigation. And so I don't know how, based on like the logic of complete deferring of the courts, that you can even say that Nixon did anything completely wrong. Perhaps you agree, as I do, that the centralization of executive authority under Nixon was incredibly alarming. What you had there was the president immunizing himself from criminal review and immunizing himself from being checked on within his branch and external to his branch by claiming, for example, that he had privilege over certain documents and tapes and things, and that he had, when the president does it, it is legal. But that's the kind of tenor that I've been hearing from a lot of, or I've been feeling certainly from a lot of what's going on here. Let's just stick to the facts of what's going on here. Both Zetsu, I believe, I think, no, this is confirmed. Zetsu and Lactoid both said that the Impoundment Act is being violated. Both of them acknowledge that certain types of indefinite, however you want to define indefinite, I would say with no permanent end date. That's how I always meant it. I never meant it as anything other than that. That would be unconstitutional or unlawful. Arbitrarily, we can talk about the specific continuum word exactly. It's unconstitutional. And you can do that with any constitutional principle. It's completely fatuous to bring that up and be like, oh, because you can't say the precise date, but you know that it's the full fiscal year. But we know that he's not being complied with. And if anything is an usurpation of federal legislative authority, this must be. It cannot be the case that what was envisioned by the framers was that the president could just, take an entire year, not listen to Congress at all, not, execute any of their funding decisions, take a day off where they say, okay, now we're releasing this, and then pause it again. That cannot be the system that we're going through. But let's take a step even further back and examine it as the soy pill did, in I think a really nice way, of what's actually happening here. What is going on here? They're telegraphing that they do not want a single check on executive power. That's why they're firing the inspector generals. They're not complying with these procedures for a reason, because they want to put a thumb in the eye of Congress and in the courts. And they have this kind of about face about, Trump's recent decisions to try to evade judicial review, the rescinding of the memo. None of them are convincing. That he was just, the memo was so disruptive, but the policy itself wasn't. The memo is the policy. They said that the policy hasn't changed. They just rescinded the memo. And you're not going to accept this judge who's like very clearly on the record stating something, but you're willing to defer to the courts in other instances. And so it's a complete inconsistency here. And what's the point of all this? The point of all this is authoritarian government. That is what they want to do, because those are his tendencies. He's flatly saying it, that you're not going to defy this administration. Listen to their words. Dictator on day one in the start of the campaign, and listen to the authors of Project 2025, who are absolutely influencing this administration from day one. The executive orders mapped on from Project 2025, the personnel from Project 2025. And for us to have to sit here and listen and pretend that there is no connection between Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation, and this administration is completely preposterous. The notion that the Civil Rights Act and Title VII, I'm finishing up, are more constitutional threats than this centralization of authority is laughable. And so, you have eyes, you have ears. This is concerning. You should be alarmed. You should be incredibly alarmed. And you should be watching the administration like a hawk to see what they're going to do next. So it's going to be fucked up.
Okay. Gang, you can follow him at the links in my YouTube description. Is there anything else you want to shout out other than your Twitch channel?
Pisco on Twitch and Pisco's Hour on YouTube now.
Pisco's Hour on YouTube. Gang, check that out. I'll probably add that to the description later. Send me a link to that, please, so I can get the thing right. I'll let you go in a second, gang, but I want to have a say a little bit, just bear with me, okay?
Can't help himself.
I know. So, please, ladies and gentlemen, right? We can look to see what Trump has said and what Trump is doing. Whether we call it a crisis or not doesn't matter to me. But what Trump wants to do is he wants to assert more power than the Constitution, I feel, gives him. He wants to be able to simply end the Department of Education without going through Congress. He wants to be able to fire anyone he wants at any time for any reason. He wants to be able to exercise vast amounts of authority. Do I think the Constitution will prevent him from doing so and the courts will prevent him from doing so? Sure. But that doesn't mean we let down our guard. I would disagree, though, that it's time to panic. Panic serves no one. Panic does no good. Do not fear. Fear is a mind killer. Figure out a way to stop him and do so. Okay, that's it. I'll be quick. I'll see you guys later. No stream tomorrow. Next stream's on Monday when we talk about Doge. Bye-bye, everyone. Wait, bye.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.